Chapter 425. Lin Shihao stood up abruptly. His dark eyes were like a storm as he stared intently at the scalpel on her neck. Bai Meiwei walked up to him step by step. Her anger and sadness were intertwined. She stared at his face and said slowly, "Lin Shihao, I didn't expect you to be so cruel. I won't forgive you." "Lin Shihao, I originally felt a trace of guilt in my heart. From now on, I won't hesitate anymore. I won't feel guilty anymore. Even if I have to resort to unscrupulous means, I will snatch you away." Lin Shihao clenched his fists and pursed his lips. "Meiwei, don't be rash. Put down the scalpel." She smiled miserably. "Let me tell you, if you want me to give up the child, I'll have to die." There were many patients waiting in the corridor. They had already noticed this scene and looked over curiously. Bai Meiwei ignored them and continued to place the scalpel on her neck. Step by step, she walked away from Lin Shihao's line of sight. Lin Shihao stood stiffly on the spot and watched her back disappear at the end of the corridor. Unknowingly, Tang Chengfeng was already standing beside him. He patted his shoulder and said in a low voice, "I'm sorry. I didn't do it." Lin Shihao shook his head. "It has nothing to do with you. From the beginning, I shouldn't have dragged you into this." From the moment he decided to deceive Bai Meiwei into performing the operation, he had abandoned his professional ethics as a doctor. If the plan had succeeded, he would have caused Tang Chengfeng to abandon his principles as a doctor. Bai Meiwei walked out of the hospital and threw the scalpel into the trash can. Her strong will collapsed in an instant. Her heart was beating wildly and her back was covered in a layer of cold sweat. She clenched her fists in fear. If she hadn't been vigilant, if she had been injected with anesthetics, then the child in her stomach would have disappeared. How could he be so cruel to her? Bai Meiwei's nose twitched and tears streamed down her face. She walked on the road with teary eyes, her chest filled with sorrow. She lowered her head and only cared about her sadness. She did not pay attention to what was in front of her. Suddenly, she heard the sharp sound of a car horn. She hurriedly raised her head and saw a car driving over. It was getting closer and closer to her. She was so scared that she quickly retreated. Unexpectedly, someone was pushing a bicycle behind her. She happened to bump into that person. Bai Meiwei lay on the ground in agony. Her stomach was in so much pain that there was a warm current flowing out from her body, flowing along the inside of her thighs. She tried her best to suppress the panic in her heart and asked the people around her for help. "Please save me, save my child." The owner of the bicycle had already ridden away. Many people stayed far away, not wanting to get into trouble. A middle-aged woman couldn't bear it and went forward to take a look. She immediately screamed, "Oh my God, she's bleeding. Someone help me send her to the hospital." The onlookers retreated. Bai Meiwei was both in pain and anxious. "Please, I beg you to help me. I will definitely thank you." The middle-aged woman sighed and did not care about anything else. She helped Bai Meiwei up from the ground. "Miss, don't be anxious. I'll send you to the hospital." Since no one was willing to help, she would just do it. Even if this girl relied on her, she would accept it. She could not just watch this girl lie on the ground and watch her lose her child. After all, the middle-aged woman was old and Bai Meiwei's right leg was twisted. It was very inconvenient for the two of them to walk. There were more and more bloodstains on the ground. A young woman could not stand it anymore and took the initiative to help support Bai Meiwei. The Women and Children's Hospital was less than 50 meters away. The two of them planned to send her to that hospital, but Bai Meiwei did not agree. She was worried that Tang Chengfeng would take the opportunity to abort her child. The middle-aged woman was extremely anxious. "Miss, your condition is very bad now. Why are you still choosing a hospital? Hurry, little girl, let's send her to the Women and Children's Hospital." The middle-aged woman and the young woman ignored Bai Meiwei's objections and sent her to the gynecology emergency room of the Women and Children's Hospital. Fortunately, Tang Chengfeng was not on duty. After a round of emergency treatment, the child was not saved in the end. Her uterus was not well developed, so it was easy for her to miscarry the child. Moreover, before her accident, she had been shocked and agitated, which had a certain impact. When Bai Meiwei heard the news, she fainted. When she woke up again, she touched her flat abdomen. Her tears were like broken beads, falling nonstop. As a gynecologist, she knew that it was almost impossible for her to have another child in the future. Her poor child was only 3 months old, and it was gone just like that. Why was God so cruel to her? She covered herself with the blanket and cried bitterly. She rested in the hospital for an afternoon and calmed down a little. Then, she talked to the emergency doctor for more than half an hour and asked her to keep her miscarriage a secret. Bai Meiwei returned home that night. After thinking about it, she was unwilling to give up just like that. The child was gone, and it was all Lin Shihao's fault. If he had not been so cruel, she would not have been so uneasy and had an accident. She blamed all the mistakes on him, and she had even more reason to persevere. She lay on the bed, her pale face looking gloomy and terrifying. She smiled coldly, picked up her phone, and called Jiang Ruolin's number. After deliberately getting close to her some time ago, their relationship was now very good. Soon, Jiang Ruolin's gentle voice came through. Meiwei, why did you suddenly think of calling me? What's the matter? The coldness on Bai Meiwei's face faded, and it was replaced by a sobbing expression. She sobbed softly. Auntie Jiang, I'm sorry. There's something that I've been hiding from you. Meiwei, don't cry. What happened? She cried even more sadly. Auntie Jiang, I can't say it. If I say it, you'll definitely think that I'm a bad woman and that I'm deliberately destroying your son's family. Jiang Ruolin's heart thumped. Meiwei, the matter you're talking about, don't tell me it has something to do with Shihao? Auntie, I'm sorry. If Senior hadn't forced me into a dead end, I definitely wouldn't have called you. Sob. Jiang Ruolin's heart pounded. She said anxiously, Meiwei, you're making me anxious. What happened? Tell me in detail. Bai Meiwei was crying her heart out. Jiang Ruolin was anxiously stomping her feet on the other end of the phone. It wasn't easy to calm her down. She sobbed and said, 3 months ago, Senior and I attended a seminar. Senior drank too much, so I sent him to his room to rest. In the end, I wanted to resist, but he was too strong. I couldn't do anything. Jiang Ruolin sat heavily on the sofa, her vision turning black. Her son, after drinking, actually raped Meiwei? Later, I found out that I was pregnant. I originally wanted to abort the child, but my uterus was maldeveloped. If I aborted the child, I might not be able to be a mother for the rest of my life. So I begged Senior to let me give birth to the child. I swore that I would never destroy his family, but he wasn't willing. Today, he tricked me into going to the hospital to abort the child. Fortunately, I found out in time and escaped. Jiang Ruolin almost fainted. How could this be? Bai Meiwei sobbed. Auntie Jiang, I beg you. You're the only one who can help me now. I beg you to persuade Senior to let me keep my son. Even if I give birth to the child, I won't destroy his family. Please believe me. Jiang Ruolin's head buzzed. Her fingers trembled slightly. She was silent for a long time before she said, Meiwei, I'm very sorry that Shihao forced you. As for the child, let me think about it. Bai Meiwei sobbed. Thank you, Auntie Jiang. Jiang Ruolin felt extremely guilty. It was clearly her son who hurt her, but this silly girl was still thanking her. She was so ashamed that she couldn't show her face. After ending the call, Jiang Ruolin wanted to immediately run to Lin Shihao and question him. However, it was already late at night, so it was obviously not suitable. Moreover, she had to think about how to deal with the child in Bai Meiwei's stomach. The next day was Saturday. It was supposed to be a leisurely holiday, but for Jiang Ruolin and Lin Shihao, it was the beginning of a war. Lin Shihao heard a knock on the door early in the morning. When he opened the door, he saw his mother standing at the door in a towering rage. He frowned. Mom, what's wrong with you? Jiang Ruolin quickly changed her shoes and entered the room. She closed the door with a bang. She pointed at his nose and scolded, You brat, look at what wicked things you've done. She had never scolded him so harshly before. His frown deepened. Mom, speak clearly. When did I make you angry again? Jiang Ruolin was so angry that her eyes were blazing. She roared, Don't you know what you've done? Tell me yourself, what did you do to Bai Meiwei? You became muddle-headed after drinking a little wine. Not only did you ruin her chastity, you even forced her to abort the child. How can you be so cruel? Are you still my son? Lin Shihao's pupils contracted abruptly, and his fists clenched tightly. He knew that Bai Meiwei must have told her the truth. He gritted his teeth and said sternly, "Mom, it's my fault for ruining her chastity. I had my reasons for forcing her to abort the child. I didn't want her to ruin my marriage with Siki. Meiwei already swore to me that she would never ruin your marriage. The child is already more than 3 months old. If she really wanted to ruin your marriage, why would she wait until now?" Lin Shihao said sternly, "Mom, you don't understand at all. Bai Meiwei isn't as simple as you think. She's deliberately stalling for time. She had an agreement with me previously. If I went on 5 dates with her, she would abort the child on her own accord. But in reality, she had no intention of aborting the child at all. She was lying to me. Even when she got close to you, she had a motive. She wanted to use you." Slap. Jiang Rulin slapped his face. Both of them were stunned at the same time. Lin Shihao's face hurt. He stared at his mother with a complicated expression. Since they were young, he had always been her pride. She had never hit him. Beauty novel, Song Shu 566. Chapter 426. Jiang Rulin stared at the red mark on his face. Her heart ached a little, and she regretted that she had acted rashly. However, her emotions were quickly overshadowed by her anger. She said angrily, "Lin Shihao, is this how I taught you? You've done something wrong, yet you refuse to admit it and make up for it. Instead, you push the blame onto others. Is this how I taught you?" Lin Shihao was so angry that he laughed. "Fine, then tell me, how should I admit my mistake and make up for it? Do I have to divorce Siki and take responsibility for Bai Meiwei before you're satisfied? Have you ever thought that Siki is also a victim? Who among us has ever made it up to her?" Jiang Rulin's expression froze. Then she said angrily, "Fine, then call Siki out now. We'll discuss how to solve this problem. Siki is on a business trip. She hasn't returned yet. If he told her that Siki had run away from home, it would only cause more trouble. Call her now and ask her to come back quickly." Jiang Rulin became angrier as she spoke. "How long has it been? What business trip does she have to be away for so long? How can she not care about such a big thing happening at home?" Lin Shihao's expression became uglier and uglier, and he was about to explode. He said in a low voice, "Mom, I've been hiding that matter from Siki. It has nothing to do with her. Don't vent your anger on her." Jiang Rulin was still angry and did not feel that she had gone overboard. She still insisted that he call Yi Siki back to discuss countermeasures. Lin Shihao had no choice but to take out his phone and call Yi Siki. He thought that her phone was still turned off, and he had found an excuse to brush off his mother. He did not expect that the call would go through. The phone rang 3 or 4 times before it was picked up. The person on the other end of the line did not speak. His heart almost stopped beating. He held the phone nervously and called her hoarsely, "Wifey." Yi Siki's voice was very calm. "I'll be home soon. We'll talk when I come back." Without waiting for him to speak, she hung up the phone. Lin Shihao held the phone in a daze. His eyes were blank and a little uneasy. She was back. He was very happy that she had returned safely. However, was she back to divorce him? Jiang Rulin nudged his shoulder. "What did Siki say?" He smiled bitterly. "She'll be home soon." Home soon? Could it be that he's already downstairs? Jiang Rulin muttered to herself and walked straight to the window. Then she lifted the curtains and looked downstairs. They lived on the 5th floor and could clearly see a luxury car parked in the residential area downstairs. Other than that, they didn't see anyone else. Jiang Rulin shook her head. It seemed that she had guessed wrong. She was about to put down the curtain when the car door suddenly opened. A woman wearing a down jacket and snow boots got out of the car. Who else could that be but Yi Siki? Even if she was a little far away, she could still recognize her own daughter-in-law. Yi Siki stood in front of the car and smiled at Xiao Tianxing. "Hurry home and rest. Be careful on the road." Xiao Tianxing smiled. If you need any help, feel free to contact me. Got it. She waved her hand and turned to go upstairs. Xiao Tianxing was about to start the car when he suddenly saw the scarf she had left on the seat. He hurriedly called her name. Yi Siki stopped in her tracks and turned around. He had already gotten out of the car and was holding her scarf in his hand. Your scarf. Thank you. I was too careless. She quickly took 2 steps forward and wanted to take the scarf from his hand. He didn't give it to her. Instead, he raised his arm and wrapped the scarf around her neck. His actions were gentle and meticulous. Yi Siki awkwardly grabbed the scarf and took a step back. Thank you. I'll leave first. Jiang Rulin naturally saw this scene. She was so shocked that she shouted, Shihao, come over quickly. Look at the man with Siki. Who is he? Lin Shihao's heart tightened. He strode to the window and happened to see Xiao Tianxing standing in the same spot as he watched Siki go upstairs. Could it be that Siki had been with Xiao Tianxing all this time when she ran away from home? Do you know that man? I just saw him putting the scarf around Siki's neck. Their actions are too intimate. Jiang Rulin said angrily. Xiao Tianxing was putting a scarf around her neck? Lin Shihao's fingers suddenly clenched, and his heart almost stopped. Although he couldn't see Xiao Tianxing's expression clearly, he felt uneasy seeing him standing downstairs for so long and looking in the direction Siki had left. He hadn't guessed wrongly. Xiao Tianxing really liked her. They must have been together for the past 7 or 8 days. Lin Shihao's heart was flustered and in pain. He was worried that Siki had really come back to divorce him. He supported himself against the wall with one hand. His face was deathly pale. He lowered his head slightly, and his fine hair covered his eyes. His movements were stiff as he maintained this position. Jiang Rulin was still nagging at Siki when she suddenly realized that something was wrong with her son. She quickly held his arm. Shihao, what's wrong? Why do you look so pale? I'm fine. Lin Shihao avoided her hand. The door was unlocked. Lin Shihao and Jiang Rulin looked up at the door at the same time. Yi Siki pushed the door open and stood at the door. The moment she saw Jiang Rulin, she was stunned. Mom, you're here. Jiang Rulin's face was solemn. She didn't say anything and sat down on the sofa with her hands on her knees. She looked like she was about to be interrogated. Yi Siki didn't say anything else. She bent down to change her shoes, hung her coat on the hanger and said calmly, Mom, have a seat. I'll go make some tea. Jiang Rulin's tone was stiff. No need. Come here. I have something to say. Yi Siki sat on the sofa opposite her with a calm expression. She had already prepared herself mentally and was waiting for the storm to come. Lin Shihao naturally sat beside her. His expression was terrible. Siki hadn't looked at him since she entered. She was so cold that it made him uneasy. Jiang Rulin glanced at her son, then turned her gaze to Yi Siki. She asked coldly, Where have you been these past few days? Yi Siki said calmly, Lessa, Tibet. Lin Shihao's pupils suddenly shrank. Jiang Rulin snorted. Who did you go with? Alone. Jiang Rulin's anger suddenly swelled. She slammed the table. Alone? Do you think I'm blind? Who was the man who sent you back downstairs just now? Did you go with him? Yi Siki calmly looked at her angry face. Mom, I went to Tibet alone. He's my boss. He used a private plane to bring me back from Lessa. That's all. He helped you with your scarf just now. Is this a normal superior-subordinate relationship? Tell me, is there something between you and him that can't be revealed? What business trip? It's all fake. I think it's more like you went out to fool around. Lin Shihao couldn't take it anymore. He stopped her sternly. Mum, don't talk nonsense. Siki isn't that kind of person. Jiang Rulin glared at her son. Shut up. We'll talk about your business later. Yi Siki suddenly found it very funny. Although she had expected to be greeted with a storm, she didn't expect it to be so exciting. It turned out that she was the one who was in the wrong. She chuckled and said calmly, Mom, you're right. Actually, I didn't go on a business trip. I went out to relax. As for why I went out to relax, I think you should be very clear. I know whether I did anything to let your son down. He knows very well. You're so anxious to force me to admit those groundless things. Do you think that if I also made a mistake, there's no reason not to forgive your son's mistakes? Jiang Ruolin's hidden intentions were exposed. Her face turned red and white, and she looked very ugly. Yi Siki continued, Mom, I'm not stupid. I understand some things. I'm just pretending not to understand because I don't want to be so calculative. In my heart, you're all my family. How can there be so many petty things between family members? But after all these years, have you ever treated me as family? Even if you raised a dog for 8 years, you would still have feelings for it. They had been together for 8 years. How could she not have any scruples about the serious crime of infidelity on her head for her son's sake? Yi Siki's calm gaze fell on Jiang Ruolin. There was no blame or anger, but it was so calm that it made her heart palpitate. She said angrily, even if there's nothing between you and that man, you can't deny that he has other intentions for you. You abandoned your family and your son these past few days. Do you think you're in the right? Mom, stop talking. Lin Shihao's face was ashen. He said agitatedly, Siki went out to relax because of me. It has nothing to do with her at all. Don't push all the blame onto her. Jiang Ruolin was so angry at her son that she wanted to vomit blood. Who did she say so much for? Wasn't it to save some face for him? Yet he was standing on his daughter-in-law's side. He had completely thrown away his dignity as the man in charge of the family. Lin Shihao didn't care about her anger at all. He said in a low voice, Mom, you didn't come here today to blame Siki. You came here to discuss how to solve Bai Meiwei's problem. Don't get the main point wrong. Jiang Ruolin was so angry that her fingers trembled. She glared at him fiercely. Fine. Then tell me, what do you plan to do? The child is already 3 months old. Don't tell me you still want her to abort the child? Lin Shihao glanced at the expressionless Yi Siki with her eyebrows lowered. He said slowly, the child can't be kept. I plan to ask Director Bai for forgiveness. Director Bai will definitely not agree to Bai Meiwei keeping the child. Jiang Ruolin snorted coldly. I think you're too naive. If Director Bai knew that his daughter's uterus was stunted and she couldn't have another child after aborting the child, do you think he would still force his daughter to abort the child? What's more, have you thought about the consequences of asking Director Bai for forgiveness? If it's a light punishment, you'll be fired from the hospital and lose your job. If it's a heavy punishment, you'll be sued in court and your reputation will be ruined. Lin Shihao clenched his fists. His eyes were frighteningly hazy. I've already made preparations. Even if I end up with nothing and my reputation ruined, I'll protect this family. Jiang Ruolin's voice was fierce. Then have you considered for Nyonyo? She'll be laughed at for having a rapist for a father. Welfare, Shinwu 799. Chapter 427. Jiang Ruolin said sternly, then have you considered Nyonyo's situation? She'll be laughed at for having a rapist for a father. Lin Shihao pursed his thin lips. There was an indescribable emotion surging in his deep eyes. He clenched his fists tightly and said in a low and cold voice, being laughed at is better than being in a single-parent family. I won't let Nyonyo lose her father or mother. After Jiang Ruolin's intense outburst, she seemed to have lost all her energy. She leaned against the sofa stiffly and tiredly and said weakly, Siki, what do you think? Yi Siki stroked the hair by her ear and said calmly, my thoughts are simple. If Bai Meiwei wants to give birth to the child, I'll take Nyonyo and leave. Lin Shihao's body stiffened and he blurted out, I won't let her give birth to the child. Jiang Ruolin was silent for a few seconds and said, things haven't reached that stage yet. Let's have a good talk with Meiwei. The atmosphere froze and the three of them fell silent. Yi Siki didn't want to dwell on this issue and said calmly, I'm going to visit my parents and bring Nyonyo back. She got up to leave, but Lin Shihao grabbed her wrist and stood up. I'll go with you. His mother-in-law had become suspicious these days and had asked him many times if there were any problems with his relationship with Siki. He should tell them the truth. Even if they scolded and punished him, he would ask for their forgiveness. Jiang Ruolin guessed her son's thoughts and wanted to stop him, but when she saw his determined expression, she swallowed her words. I'm going to change. Yi Siki slowly pushed his hand away with an indifferent expression. Lin Shihao drove while Yi Siki sat in the passenger seat. She turned her head to look out the window. It was almost the spring festival and the shops were booming with business. Many people had already started to buy New Year's goods. In the past, she would happily buy new clothes for her husband and child at this time, but this year, she felt dispirited and desolate. She didn't know if their family of 3 could have a reunion. "Honey," Lin Shihao suddenly spoke in a low voice. "Did you see the messages I sent you?" She was silent for a while before she said faintly, "No, I deleted them all." Lin Shihao tilted his head and looked at her frail back view. His heart felt uncomfortable. His slender fingers gripped the steering wheel tightly, and his expression was gloomy. "Honey, I've lied to you 3 times. The first time, I said that I was celebrating my colleague's birthday, but I was actually on a date with Bai Meiwei. We went to see a movie. The second time, I said I was going to attend a seminar, but I was actually eating with Bai Meiwei at the revolving restaurant. The third time, on Christmas Day, I said..." "Enough," Yi Siki interrupted him coldly. "You don't have to say any more. I already knew that you were lying to me, and I was lying to you too. I placed a tracker in the trunk of your car. I know where you and Bai Meiwei went like the back of my hand. It wasn't an accident that we ran into each other at the revolving restaurant and the clothing store. I did it on purpose. My goal was to ruin your date." Lin Shihao's eyes widened. He couldn't believe what he had just heard. She closed her eyes, and her tone was slightly tired. "I've always trusted you, and I've never doubted you, but you've shattered my trust in you time and time again. You see, there's no such thing as trust between us anymore. You lied to me and I lied to you. Or even now." He could tell that she was disheartened. His heart clenched as he slammed on the brakes and pulled the car to the side. He abruptly turned her shoulders around to face him. He stared into her eyes and said anxiously, "Honey, listen to me. The reason why I went on a date with Bai Meiwei was because I had a promise with her. Within a month, we had to go on 5 dates, and then she would have to abort the child. I was worried that you would leave me if you found out that she was pregnant, so I kept it from you. It's my fault. I shouldn't have kept it from you, and I shouldn't have lied to you. It's all my fault. Please give me another chance." The man who was gentle and calm, open-minded, and unrestrained, who would remain calm even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him, was gone. Yi Siki only saw a face full of panic. Her heart felt a little uncomfortable, and her eyes felt a little sour. She thought that after the trip to Lessa, she could face him calmly, but she had overestimated her ability to bear it. She bit her lip hard and lowered her eyes. She didn't want to see his deep and painful eyes. She said lightly, "I didn't want to come back, but I can't let go of Nyonyo. Let Bai Meiwei abort the child. Otherwise, I'll take Nyonyo away." This was already her bottom line. She couldn't give in anymore. Lin Shihao suddenly pulled her into his arms. His strong and powerful arms hugged her tightly, and his voice was hoarse. "I'll make her abort the child. I'll definitely make her abort the child." Zhou Rongfang and Yi Weiliang were both honest retired workers. The couple had a son and a daughter. Their son and daughter-in-law lived in another city. Their daughter, Yi Siki, was married in this city and often went back to visit the old couple. This time, their daughter went on a business trip for 7 to 8 days and didn't even make a phone call. The old couple's hearts were in turmoil. They kept feeling that something had happened between their daughter and son-in-law. When Lin Shihao and his wife arrived at the Yi family's house, the old couple accompanied their granddaughter, Nyonyo, to do her homework in the living room. When Nyonyo saw her parents, whom she hadn't seen for a few days, she excitedly pounced on them and hugged their legs, refusing to let go. "Mommy, why did you go on a business trip for so long? I missed you so much." Yi Siki picked up her daughter and smiled as she pinched her face. "Mommy is back now. Tell Mommy, did you listen to Grandpa and Grandma at home?" "Yes, I'm very obedient. I help Grandma clean up the dishes every day. Isn't that right, Grandma?" Nyonyo hugged her neck and turned her little head to Zhou Rongfeng. She winked mischievously. "Yes, our family's Nyonyo is very obedient." Zhou Rongfeng smiled as she welcomed the couple into the house and made tea for them. "Siki, Take Nyonyo back to her room to do her homework. I have something to discuss with Dad and Mom. Yi Siki glanced at Lin Shihao. His expression was solemn. He must have made a decision. She pursed her lips. Dad, Mom, I'll take Nyonyo back to her room first. She picked up her daughter's homework book and led her back to her room. She locked the door. Nyonyo sat in front of the desk. Her skinny back was straight. She held a ballpoint pen in her hand and wrote her homework stroke by stroke. Yi Siki's gaze fell on her daughter, but all her attention was elsewhere. She didn't know how Lin Shihao's discussion with his parents went. She didn't know if her parents would blame him. In the living room, Lin Shihao told the two elders about his drunken mistake and Bai Meiwei's pregnancy in full detail. Zhou Rongfang couldn't believe her ears. After the shock, her body trembled slightly. How could this be? How could this happen? Yi Weiliang's face was ashen. He almost fainted. His back slumped against the sofa as he gasped heavily. Zhou Rongfang hurriedly rushed over and rubbed his chest. Old man, don't be agitated. Be careful of your high blood pressure. Lin Shihao strode over to the cupboard and took out the medicine bottle for treating high blood pressure. He poured out a few pills and brought a cup of warm water to Yi Weiliang. Dad, don't be agitated. Take the medicine first. You, go away. Yi Weiliang was agitated. He trembled as he pushed Lin Shihao away. The pills in Lin Shihao's hand fell to the ground, and the water in the cup spilled all over the floor. Old man, what are you doing? Zhou Rongfang's tears streamed down her face. She wiped them away. Shihao, give me the medicine. Zhou Rongfang took the medicine bottle from Lin Shihao. She poured out the pills again and fed them to Yi Weiliang. Yi Weiliang slowly closed his eyes and leaned against the sofa in dejection and exhaustion. After resting for a while, he opened his eyes and glared angrily at Lin Shihao. He squeezed out a few words from between his teeth. Go away. I don't want to see you. Old man, what's the use of chasing him away now? The most important thing is that we have to come up with a countermeasure. Yi Weiliang was impatient. He was so angry that he almost lost his mind. Although Zhou Rongfang was angry, she still had reason. She tried to persuade her husband. Lin Shihao clenched his fists. His eyes were as dark as the sea. His tall and straight body was like a mountain standing in front of them. His whole body emitted an extremely oppressive aura. Slowly, he bent his knees and knelt on the cold floor. His chest was very straight, like a pine tree, fearlessly welcoming the attack of the wind and snow. Zhou Rongfang and Yi Weiliang were both shocked. As the saying goes, a man has gold under his knees. Moreover, Lin Shihao was a man full of pride. It was impossible for him to kneel to anyone. At this moment, he threw away his dignity and faced to kneel here and beg for their forgiveness. His eyes were extremely sincere. He said word by word, Dad, Mom, I was drunk and did something wrong. I have already sworn that I will never drink again in my life. I have let down Siki and your trust in me. Please give me another chance. I will make up for my mistakes and treat Siki and Nyonyo well. Yi Weiliang was furious. He turned his head away and refused to look at him. He had hurt her daughter. How could Zhou Rongfang not be angry? How could she not hate him? But her daughter and son-in-law were husband and wife after all. They even had a child together. Was she going to divorce him because of this? She sighed and tugged at Yi Weiliang's sleeve. Yi Weiliang ignored her and continued to sulk. Lin Shihao did not speak anymore. He knelt silently in front of the two elders. The two sides were in a deadlock for more than 10 minutes. Yi Weiliang's anger subsided a little. He turned his neck stiffly and stared coldly at Lin Shihao. He asked stiffly, What do you plan to do? Lin Shihao said respectfully, I will think of a way to make Bai Meiwei abort the child. Zhou Rongfang asked, Shihao, do you still want to live with Siki? Lin Shihao's tone was firm. Mom, I love Siki. I have never thought of divorcing her. Please believe me. Zhou Rongfang was satisfied with his attitude. She tugged at her husband's sleeve again. This time, Yi Weiliang was finally willing to give her a way out. He said coldly, Get up. Welfare, Song Shu 566. Chapter 428. When Yi Siki came out of the bedroom, they had already finished talking. Her mother's eyes were slightly red, and her father was sulking. When Lin Shihao saw her come out, his eyes moved and he pursed his lips slightly. Dad, Mom, I'll go in and see Nyonyo. Zhou Rongfang nodded. Only the three of them were left in the living room. Yi Siki sat opposite her parents. Zhou Rongfang looked at her and sighed. Siki, why didn't you tell us earlier that such a big thing happened? Yi Siki said gently, Mom, I thought that I could solve it, so I didn't want you to worry. Dad, Mom, I'm sorry. Zhou Rongfang's eyes reddened again. She choked a little. Silly girl, we were worried about you. I'm fine. Yi Siki got up and sat beside her. She held her hands and smiled. Yi Weiliang coughed and said in a deep voice, Siki, although we didn't make things difficult for Lin Shihao, it's still up to you whether you want to forgive him. Zhou Rongfang frowned and held Siki's hands tightly. Siki, tell me honestly, do you still want to be with him? She was worried that her daughter was stubborn and wouldn't forgive Lin Shihao. Yi Siki pursed her lips. Dad, Mom, I want to give him another chance. It's not for myself, but for Nyonyo. I don't want my child to grow up in a single-parent family. Zhou Rongfang heaved a sigh of relief. Actually, she didn't approve of them getting a divorce. After all, they still had feelings for each other. Yi Siki didn't want to get a divorce for her daughter's sake, but her condition was that Bai Meiwei had to abort the child. How to make Bai Meiwei abort the child had already become a headache for Lin Shihao. On the other hand, Jiang Rulin was also in a dilemma. She didn't want her son and daughter-in-law to get a divorce, but she also wanted to help Bai Meiwei keep the child. As for why she wanted to help Bai Meiwei keep the child, there were two reasons. First, if Bai Meiwei aborted the child, she wouldn't be able to have children in the future. Jiang Rulin couldn't bear to see Bai Meiwei fall into that situation. Secondly, Bai Meiwei had already said that she was pregnant with a son. Jiang Rulin had always dreamed of holding a grandson. Although this grandson was not the legitimate son, he was still her son's seed. Of course, she couldn't bear to let Bai Meiwei abort it. Due to the above two reasons, Jiang Rulin didn't actively help her son come up with a plan to abort the child. Instead, she tried to persuade Lin Shihao and his wife to have a good talk with Bai Meiwei, hoping that both sides would reach an agreement. Soon, they began a four-person meeting to discuss the child's fate. In the VIP room of the restaurant, the three members of the Lin family had already taken their seats. Bai Meiwei arrived late. She was wearing a white coat, which made her originally white cheeks appear even paler. When the waiter pulled out a chair for her, she stretched out her right hand and carefully protected her abdomen. This protective posture of a mother-to-be hurt Yi Siki's eyes. She lowered her eyes, picked up the teacup, and took a sip of hot tea. Bai Meiwei smiled gently. Auntie Jiang, I'm sorry I'm late. There was a bit of a traffic jam on the way. It's okay. It's the weekend. It's normal to have a lot of traffic on the road. Jiang Rulin smiled kindly. The two of them had a lot in common and quickly chatted. Yi Siki drank her tea silently. Lin Shihao said expressionlessly, let's talk business. Bai Meiwei smiled slightly. Lin Shihao looked at her and said in a low voice, Meiwei, I hope you can give up on the child. The smile on Bai Meiwei's face froze. She put down the teacup in her hand and said in a sad tone, Senior, if I abort this child, I won't be able to be a mother in the future. Are you really that heartless? I've already said that I won't destroy your and sister-in-law's family. After I give birth to the child, I'll stay far away and never disturb you again. Can I do that? Lin Shihao's expression changed slightly and he clenched his fists. His voice was still cold as he said, The child in your stomach is like a thorn in my and Siki's heart. If we don't remove it, the three of us won't be able to live a peaceful life. Your body is special. It's just that it's difficult for you to give birth. It's not completely impossible. I believe that with current medical standards, your illness can definitely be cured. Meiwei, you're still young. You still have a bright future ahead of you. Don't ruin yourself because of this child. Senior, you don't understand at all. Even if my illness can be cured, I can't risk the child in my stomach. He's my child. He's my flesh and blood. He's already been in my body for more than 3 months and has become one with my flesh and blood. How can I be heartless enough to abandon him? Bai Meiwei's beautiful eyes were already misty and her expression was distressed. Her sobbing appearance really made one's heart ache. At least she had aroused Jiang Rulin's sympathy. Her teary eyes turned slightly and her gaze fell on Jiang Rulin. Auntie Jiang, you're also a mother. You'll definitely understand my feelings as a mother. Even if I lose everything, even if I'm penniless, I still want to protect my child. I also want to raise my child into an adult. Jiang Rulin's heart ached. Bai Meiwei's words evoked her sad past. She wasn't a strong woman from the start. After her husband passed away, she had no choice but to be strong for the sake of her son, who was still in high school. Even if she had to sell everything she had, she still wanted to raise her son into a talent. Jiang Rulin faced Bai Meiwei's earnest gaze and couldn't say anything to refute her. She could only sigh heavily. Yi Siki looked coldly at Bai Meiwei. Seeing how vividly she played the role of the weak, the corners of her lips curled up mockingly. She said calmly, "Miss Bai, as far as I know, you had a prior agreement with Shihao. If he went on 5 dates with you within a month, you would agree to abort the child. Am I right?" Bai Meiwei was slightly taken aback. "Yes, we did have such an agreement. But now I've already—" Before she could finish speaking, Yi Siki interrupted her. "In other words, you originally planned to give up the child." Bai Meiwei bit her lip. "I've already changed my mind. Besides, I only went on 3 dates with Senior. Even if I changed my mind, I didn't violate our agreement." "Is that so?" Yi Siki responded calmly. She took out her phone and scrolled through a few photos. Then she raised the phone to face her. "You said that you wouldn't break up our family. Then let me ask you, why did you send me photos of you and my husband on a date?" Bai Meiwei glanced at the photos. It was a profile shot of Lin Shihao standing in front of a hot beverage store. She smiled calmly. "Sister-in-law, you might have misunderstood. I never sent you these photos. The sender's number isn't mine." Yi Siki chuckled. "Miss Bai, I have to hand it to you. You're very meticulous. This number isn't registered with your personal ID, so we can't trace it back to you. However, only the 2 of you knew about your date with my husband. It's obvious that my husband wouldn't take these photos and send them to me. If that person wasn't you, who else could it be?" Lin Shihao took the phone from Yi Siki and glanced at the photos. His expression turned ugly. Even if Bai Meiwei didn't admit it, he knew that she was the only one who had the opportunity to take these photos. He raised his head and stared at Bai Meiwei with a sharp gaze. Although Jiang Rulin didn't see the photos, she roughly understood the situation. She also turned her gaze to Bai Meiwei and waited for her answer. Faced with 3 pairs of eyes, Bai Meiwei remained calm and said calmly, "I really didn't send these photos. Maybe someone who knows us found out that I was dating Senior, so they secretly took our photos and sent them to you on purpose to attract your attention. Sister-in-law, if I really wanted to ruin your relationship, I wouldn't have used such a troublesome method. I would have just told you about my pregnancy. I've been hiding it from you all this time because I didn't want to ruin your relationship with Senior." Her words were spoken in a solemn and sincere manner. Yi Siki and Lin Shihao had already seen through her true colors and didn't believe her anymore. However, Jiang Rulin was different. She had only known Bai Meiwei for a short period of time, and Bai Meiwei had deliberately tried to get close to her, leaving her with a good impression. Therefore, she easily believed Bai Meiwei's words. Jiang Rulin helped her smooth things over. "I believe that Meiwei wouldn't do such a thing. There's no need to talk about the past now. Let's think about the main purpose of our visit today." No matter how Lin Shihao tried to persuade her, Bai Meiwei refused to give up the child. She insisted on giving birth to the child. In the end, both parties parted on bad terms. On the way home, Lin Shihao, Yi Siki, and Yi Siki's hearts were heavy. No one spoke. Lin Shihao dropped Jiang Rulin off at her neighborhood. Jiang Rulin wasn't in a hurry to get out of the car. She glanced at Yi Siki, who was sitting in the back seat with her, and then looked at Lin Shihao, who was driving. She slowly said, "On the way back, I've been thinking about the child. I've thought of an idea, but I'm afraid you won't agree." Lin Shihao turned his head. Mom, tell me. What's the idea? Jiang Rulin coughed and said uncomfortably, agree to buy Mei Wei giving birth to the child. After the child is born, we'll bring him back to our family and raise him. He'll take your surname. As for Mei Wei, she can visit the child regularly. Before she could finish speaking, Lin Shihao angrily interrupted her. Mom, how could you come up with such a ridiculous idea? I definitely won't keep this child. The most difficult thing to say had already been said, so Jiang Rulin couldn't care about anything else. When her son shouted, she immediately flew into a rage out of humiliation. Bai Mei Wei is pregnant with a son. He's also our Lin family's child. What's wrong with letting her give birth to the child and let him acknowledge his ancestors? Yi Siki clenched her fists tightly and pinched her palms. She was trying her best to suppress the bitterness in her heart. Her mother-in-law actually said such things. Lin Shihao's face was ashen. He said angrily, only the child my wife gives birth to will be a descendant of the Lin family. I only have one child, Nyonyo. Mom, don't ever mention such things again. Welfare Hongcha 866. Chapter 429. In the end, all three parties were defeated. Because of an unborn child, their familial ties were trampled and torn apart. Yi Siki was physically and mentally exhausted. She leaned her head against the seat and didn't look back even after Jiang Rulin got out of the car. Lin Shihao looked through the rearview mirror and saw Yi Siki's curled-up figure in the corner. His heart ached. It was all his fault that things had developed to this point. If he hadn't gotten drunk that night and that incident hadn't happened, their family of three would still be living happily. How great would that be? Unfortunately, there was no medicine for regret in this world. Bai Mei Wei refused to compromise. He only had a glimmer of hope left, and that was to find Director Bai and ask him to stop Bai Mei Wei. Lin Shihao was already prepared for the worst. Even if he was sued and had to bear the legal responsibility, he would be willing to do so. Bai Jiyao was the director of the People's Hospital in the city. He was highly respected in the hospital. He was in his 50s and was kind. Although he was in a high position, he never put on airs. Lin Shihao had always admired him. Bai Jiyao only had one precious daughter, Bai Mei Wei. He hoped that his daughter would become a phoenix and paid great attention to her education since she was young. After she graduated from university, he specially sent her to the United States to further her studies for 2 years. He hoped that his daughter could inherit his legacy and become a good doctor with superb medical skills and noble medical ethics. Bai family's study. When Lin Shihao told him everything that had happened between him and Bai Mei Wei, Bai Jiyao couldn't take the blow and almost fainted. His face was pale and his finger trembled as he pointed at Lin Shihao's nose. Why, you're telling the truth? Lin Shihao said in a low voice, Director Bai, it's all my fault. I'm here today to ask for forgiveness. I'm willing to accept any punishment. Bai Jiyao fell heavily on the sofa and stared blankly at Lin Shihao. He still couldn't believe what he had just heard. At this time, he looked like an old man in his twilight years. He didn't have his usual hale and hearty demeanor. After a long time, he finally recovered from his great shock. His sharp eyes looked at Lin Shihao. What do you plan to do? Lin Shihao pursed his thin lips and said in a low voice, as long as Mei Wei gives up the child, I have no objections no matter what compensation you ask me to make. Bai Jiyao was silent for a moment. He picked up the landline and informed the servant to invite Miss to his study. 2 minutes later, Bai Mei Wei knocked on the door of the study. She didn't know that Lin Shihao was here. When she saw him, her heart tightened. Then she carefully observed her father's face. It was dark and frowning. It seemed that he was trying to suppress his anger. She immediately felt uneasy. It seemed that Lin Shihao had told her father about her pregnancy. She pretended that nothing had happened and smiled. Dad, are you looking for me? Bai Jiyao sat on the sofa. His eyes were burning with anger. He stared at Bai Mei Wei, who was standing not far away, and shouted sternly, Kneel! Bai Mei Wei bit her lip and bent her legs. Gi Gai knelt on the ground. Her long eyelashes fluttered and bean-sized tears immediately rolled down her face. Her tear-stained face was full of helplessness and grievance. Bai Jiao stiffened his neck and shouted angrily, "You unfilial daughter! Tell me, what embarrassing things have you done?" "Dad," Bai Meiwei sobbed. "Dad, don't be angry. I didn't do it on purpose. I really didn't do it on purpose." Lin Shihao clenched his fists tightly. His expression was extremely ugly. His deep eyes fell on Bai Meiwei's face. He gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, "Director Bai, all of this has nothing to do with Mei Wei. I was drunk and harmed her. If you want to hit, scold, blame, or punish, do it all to me. I won't have any objections." "Dad, Senior didn't do it on purpose, he was just drunk. Dad, I beg you, please forgive us." Bai Meiwei knelt on the ground with both legs, moving step by step towards Bai Jiao. She was crying her heart out, making people with a heart of stone unable to help but feel pity for her, let alone her father. Bai Jiao clenched his fists. The veins on the back of his hands were throbbing. He closed his eyes and slowly opened them again. In a cold voice, he said, "Mei, abort the child. As for you, Lin Shihao, hand over your work and leave the hospital. Don't ever let me see you again." Bai Meiwei hugged Bai Jiao's legs and cried, "Dad, I can't abort this child. My uterus is maldeveloped. If I abort this child, I won't be able to give birth in the future. Dad, I beg you, let me give birth to this child. Let me give birth to this child." Bai Jiao's body stiffened. It was as if he had been struck by lightning. How could this be? This child couldn't be kept. But if this was the only child in his daughter's life, how could he take it away from her? Lin Shihao had already expected this to happen. He said slowly, "Director Bai, I've studied this kind of case. After treatment with traditional Chinese medicine, even after an abortion, there's still a 20% chance of pregnancy." Bai Meiwei cried and shook her head. "No, there's only a 20% chance of success. What if I fall into that 80% chance? Dad, I beg you, let me give birth to this child. If you think I'm embarrassing, I'll go to America to give birth. I'll stay in America in the future and never come back to embarrass you. Dad, I beg you." Bai Meiwei cried bitterly and shook Bai Jiao's legs. Bai Jiao's temples throbbed and his head hurt. On one hand, it was his daughter and the Bai family's reputation. On the other hand, it was his daughter's right to be a mother. His daughter was right. There was only a 20% chance of success. No one could guarantee that his daughter would be able to give birth in the future. Bai Jiao looked at his daughter who was crying like a baby and found it difficult to make a decision. Suddenly he seemed to have aged 10 years. He waved his hand and said, "Get up first. Let me think about this matter." Because she had knelt for too long, her legs were a little numb. When Bai Meiwei stood up, her legs were still trembling. She wiped the tears from her face and sobbed softly. Bai Jiao's face was cold as he ordered his guest to leave. Lin Shihao could only follow the servant downstairs and leave. In the following week, Bai Jiao seemed to have forgotten about this matter. He didn't do anything, nor did he force Lin Shihao to hand over his work and resign. Bai Meiwei also went to work as usual. The difference was that she didn't deliberately approach Lin Shihao. Even if they met in the hospital, she didn't look at him sideways, as if she didn't know him. Lin Shihao didn't understand what the Bai family was up to. He was secretly anxious. During this period of time, he and Siki were still as loving as before in front of Nyo. But behind Nyo's back, they were actually respectful to each other. They were as polite as strangers. There was no love between husband and wife. If he wanted to break the barrier between them, he had to get rid of the child in Bai Meiwei's stomach as soon as possible. Otherwise, the gap between him and Siki would only grow wider. Lin Shihao was suffering, and Yi Siki was also suffering. She was even distracted when she was working. When she was researching new dishes, she added half a spoon of salt. Uncle Yu had always been strict with her. He scolded her with a fierce face. Yi Siki hung her head and let him scold her. The chefs and helpers around them turned to look at her from time to time. They couldn't believe that she would make such a low-level mistake. There were also some who were jealous of her. They silently watched the show. After being scolded, Yi Siki smiled. "Uncle Yu, don't be angry. I'll make another serving. Uncle Yu snorted coldly. Yi Siki immediately ran to the kitchen and washed and cut the vegetables again. It was in full swing. Uncle Yu, I'm done. Please have a taste. After Yi Siki finished cooking, she brought it in front of Uncle Yu again. Uncle Yu tasted it and said calmly, "This time, it's a pass." "Thank you, Uncle Yu." Yi Siki grinned. When she finished clearing the dishes and turned to go back to the kitchen, Uncle Yu said calmly, "Whether it's being a nutritionist or doing other jobs, don't bring your personal feelings into your work." Yi Siki stopped in her tracks. Her eyes were hot as she grinned. "I know, Uncle Yu." In the bathroom, Yi Siki looked at herself in the mirror. There was a stiff smile on her face. It was as ugly as a mask that was about to crack. She turned on the tap and splashed cold water on her cheeks. There were people walking towards the bathroom from the corridor. The two of them were still chatting. One of the women said, "Isn't that Yi Siki very capable? How come she doesn't even know how to add salt when cooking?" The other woman laughed. "Are you jealous that she has a backer? She became Uncle Yu's assistant as soon as she came in?" "I'm jealous of her? I just can't stand her. Just because she has a backer, she doesn't follow the rules and regulations. She takes a week off as soon as she asks for it. Senior employees like us can only take a week of annual leave after working for a full year. She just joined the company and—" The woman's voice stopped abruptly. She had already walked to the bathroom door and saw Yi Siki standing in front of the sink. Yi Siki acted as if she hadn't heard or seen anything. She continued splashing cold water on her face. Then she looked up at the mirror and calmly wiped the water off her face. The two gossipy women's faces turned red and white as they stood awkwardly at the door. Yi Siki calmly walked up to them and said calmly, "Please make way." The two women hurriedly moved aside, and Yi Siki calmly walked past them. In the corridor, Xiao Tianxing crossed his arms and leaned leisurely against the railing. There was a faint smile in his deep eyes as he looked at her quietly. Yi Siki walked up to him and asked, "What are you doing here?" Xiao Tianxing raised his eyebrows and said, "There are too many people here. If you don't want others to say anything nasty, follow me." With that, he walked towards the elevator. Yi Siki laughed self-deprecatingly. What other nasty things could they say? They wouldn't go so far as to say that I'm your mistress, right? Even though she said that, she still followed him into the elevator. When the elevator doors closed, only the two of them were left in the narrow space. He smirked and chuckled. They wouldn't go so far as to say that I'm their mistress. They trust my judgment. Beauty novel, Shinwu 799. Chapter 430. Yi Siki glared at him. "What do you mean by that? Am I not beautiful?" Xiao Tianxing rested his chin on his left hand and smiled happily. "Beautiful. You are very beautiful. But they think that I like the type of girls who are full of fans. As for you, you are slightly lacking." She was so angry that she almost vomited blood. She snorted coldly and turned her head to ignore him. Xiao Tianxing's smile widened. He said carelessly, "Are you angry? I'm just kidding. Your type is just right." He was afraid that she didn't understand, so he made an is sign with his hands. "I beg of you, let's not talk about this anymore." Yi Siki was embarrassed and annoyed. She rolled her eyes at him. "President Xiao, don't you have anything better to do?" Xiao Tianxing raised his eyebrows. "Of course not. I heard that someone was scolded badly by Uncle Yu. As her boss and friend, I have the obligation to show my concern." Yi Siki shrugged. "Don't worry. My psychological endurance is not that bad." The elevator stopped. Xiao Tianxing brought her into his office. The bright sunlight shone through the floor-to-ceiling windows onto the thick carpet. A snow-white Persian cat was curled up on the soft sofa. When it heard someone come in, it raised its head lazily. Its beautiful eyes narrowed. Soon, it laid its head down and went back to sleep. Yi Siki said in surprise, "You have a pet in your office. No one can stop me from enjoying life. To me, work is also a form of enjoyment." Xiao Tianxing poured 2 cups of handmade coffee. He placed 1 cup in front of her and the other in front of him. He held the Persian cat in his arms with one hand and gently rubbed its head. Yi Siki sighed. My admiration for you is like a torrential river that flows endlessly. Xiao Tianxing chuckled. He took a sip of coffee. How are things going with your family? He guessed that her distraction from work might have something to do with her family. Yi Siki stroked the hair by her ear with an indifferent expression. Bai Meiwei insisted on keeping the child. Shi Hao confessed everything to Director Bai, hoping that he could step in and stop Bai Meiwei. But until now, he hasn't given an answer. Do you think Dean Bai will force Bai Meiwei to abort the child? Xiao Donsheng leaned back on the sofa with a serious look on his face. Yi Siki smiled bitterly. I've thought about this for a long time. I've been comforting myself that Dean Bai will force her to abort the child for the sake of Bai Meiwei's reputation. But my conscience tells me that Dean Bai will very likely support his daughter to keep the child. After all, that child might be his daughter's only child. Which parent would dare to take such a big risk? Xiao Tianxing's deep eyes moved. Have you ever considered that Dean Bai actually has a third option? He can force Lin Shihao to marry his daughter. If he does that, what will you do? Yi Siki was stunned. She really hadn't thought of this. Lin Shihao hadn't thought of this either. She held the coffee cup in a daze. Her fingers trembled slightly as she shook her head. I don't know. I really don't know. Xiao Tianxing tightened his grip on the Persian cat. The cat meowed impatiently, and he slowly let go. He stroked its soft fur and said calmly, If Bai Meiwei insists on giving birth to the child, are you still willing to continue living with Lin Shihao? Yi Siki wanted to put the coffee cup back on the coffee table, but when she heard what he said, she panicked and knocked over the coffee cup. The scalding coffee spilled onto the glass coffee table and slowly flowed onto the carpet. She quickly pulled out a tissue to wipe it off, but Xiao Tianxing suddenly leaned forward and grabbed her wrist. His voice was urgent. Did you burn your hand? No. Yi Siki awkwardly tried to pull her right hand away. She looked anxiously at the pool of coffee. Hurry up and let go of me. The coffee is going to spill onto the carpet. Let me see the back of your hand. Xiao Tianxing couldn't help but let go of her hand. He pulled her wrist in front of him. There was a small red mark on the back of her fair hand. It was obvious that she had been scalded by the scalding coffee. His face darkened and his brows furrowed. He dragged her to the bathroom and complained, You said you weren't scalded. Your skin is red. Do you know what's most important? You've already scalded yourself. Why do you care about the carpet? Yi Siki was scolded by him until she couldn't raise her head. She retorted softly, It only spilled 2 drops on the back of my hand. The temperature wasn't very high either. I'm really fine. Xiao Donxing suddenly turned around and glared at her. Can't you take care of yourself a little? As he spoke, he had already dragged her into the bathroom. As expected of a presidential suite, even the bathroom was incomparably luxurious. Xiao Tianxing turned on the tap and washed the back of her hand with cold water. He warned her with a sullen face, I'm going out for a while. Continue to wash the back of your hand with cold water for at least 10 minutes. Got it. Yi Siki looked at his stern face and wanted to laugh. However, she was afraid of angering him, so she could only force herself to hold it in. Xiao Tianxing glared at her as a warning. Then he returned to his office and called his secretary over the internal line to send in a bottle of ointment for burns. As a 5-star hotel, they still had a stock of such ointment. Yi Siki stood obediently in front of the sink and washed the back of her hand with cold water. Xiao Tianxing suddenly walked in and placed a bottle of ointment on the sink. It's about time. Apply this ointment to the back of your hand. Thank you. Although Yi Siki didn't hear his conversation with his secretary, she understood his good intentions when she saw the ointment. Her heart was filled with gratitude. The conversation between them was interrupted by this small episode and did not continue. Yi Siki had disappeared for too long. It was time for her to go back to the kitchen and take a look. When she returned to the kitchen, Uncle Yu had just assigned a new task for her. She was busy with work and quickly forgot about her conversation with Xiao Tianxing. It wasn't until she received a phone call that night that she realized how far-sighted Xiao Tianxing was. At night, after Yi Siki coaxed her daughter to sleep, she returned to the bedroom. Lin Shihao was taking a shower in the bathroom when his phone on the bedside table rang. She hurried forward and picked up his phone. The caller ID showed that it was Director Bai. Her heart suddenly skipped a beat. She guessed that Director Bai was calling to talk to him about Bai Meiwei. She hesitated whether to answer the call, but her fingers had already uncontrollably pressed the answer button. "Little Lin," Bai Jiao's weathered voice rang in her ear. She opened her mouth and was about to say that she wasn't Lin Shihao when Bai Jiao continued, "I've thought about it carefully these past few days. I still can't be ruthless. Mei Wei is my only daughter. I can't use her child as a stake." Yi Siki's uneasy heart fell to the bottom. Her limbs were cold and her fingers were trembling. She almost couldn't hold the phone. He continued, "Little Lin, you said that you let Mei Wei down and that you were willing to make up for it. I only have one request. Divorce your wife, marry my daughter, and take responsibility for her. If you agree to my request, I'll let this matter go. You'll still be the director of our hospital's obstetrics and gynecology department. If you don't agree to my request, we'll meet in court. Even if I have to throw away my old face, I'll get justice for my daughter." Yi Siki sat heavily on the bed. Her right hand loosened and the phone fell to the ground with a bang. Lin Shihao happened to come out of the bathroom. He glanced at Siki, who was sitting at the head of the bed in a daze, and then at the phone on the ground. He had a bad feeling in his heart. He quickly bent down to pick up the phone. The screen showed that he was on the phone with Director Bai. Director Bai said earnestly, "Little Lin, I've always thought highly of you and even groomed you as my successor. You can call me despicable or blame me for being ruthless, but I don't care. As a father, I just want my daughter to be happy." Lin Shihao didn't hear a single word he said. His mind was filled with guesses about what he had said to Siki. Lin Shihao said faintly, "Got it." Then he ended the call. He walked in front of Siki and asked, "Honey, what did Director Bai say to you over the phone just now?" Yi Siki looked up at him. Her face was pale and her expression was bitter. "He said that he wants you to divorce me and marry Bai Meiwei. Otherwise, he'll take you to court." "Shihao, we've guessed many possible outcomes, but this was the only one we didn't think of. Tell me, what should we do?" Lin Shihao hugged her tightly and said in a low voice, "Honey, even if he takes me to court, even if I have to bear the legal responsibility, I won't divorce you." Yi Siki's nose was sour and her eyes were misty. She leaned against his chest and could hear his heart beating very fast and very frantically. His fingers pressed tightly against her back. It hurt a little, but this pain was nothing compared to the pain in his heart. They were now facing internal and external troubles and were besieged on all sides. She was hurt both physically and mentally and didn't know if she could still hold on. Lin Shihao knew very well what her silence meant. His arms tightened around her as if he wanted to squeeze her into his body. His voice was low and hoarse as he said, "Honey, tell me that you'll hold on with me." She bit her lip and tears silently flowed down her face. "Even if the whole world spurns me, I won't give up on you." His chest rose and fell violently, and there were tears in his eyes. Yi Siki couldn't hold it in anymore. She hugged him and bawled. She didn't understand why God wanted to torture them like this. They were clearly two people in love, but they couldn't stay together properly. She hated it so much. She hated that woman who destroyed her family. She also hated herself. If she had a little sense of danger and had predicted that Bai Meiwei was up to no good, perhaps they wouldn't have ended up like this today. Jiang Rulin heard about Bai Jiao's threat from Bai Meiwei. After 2 days of careful consideration, she finally decided to sacrifice her daughter-in-law to protect her son. Her son still had a bright future. She couldn't just destroy it like this. As for Siki, although she also had feelings for her, compared with her son, it didn't seem so important. At worst, she would give her more compensation. Add Shinmu 799. Chapter 431. Moreover, Bai Meiwei was pregnant with a son, which fulfilled her dream of having a grandson. Jiang Rulin was indeed a businesswoman. She was very calculative. However, Jiang Rulin still had some affection for Yi Siki. She couldn't harden her heart and force her to divorce her son. Instead, she persuaded her nicely that if she really loved Shihao, she should think about his future and his reputation. She couldn't ruin his life. Yi Siki knew what her mother-in-law was thinking. She pretended not to understand and kept silent. She had promised Lin Shihao that she would face it with him and persist until the end. Jiang Rulin couldn't persuade her the first time, so she tried a second time and a third time. Siki, you might not know, but Shihao has been having a hard time in the hospital. Bai Jiyao is already pressuring him. If you don't divorce within a month, he will file a lawsuit with the court. Seeing that Mei Wei's belly is getting bigger and bigger, there are already rumors in the hospital. Shihao might not be able to keep his position as the head of the obstetrics and gynecology department. Every time, Jiang Rulin would bring new news. This news was all about how Lin Shihao was forced and tortured. Every time, Yi Siki pretended not to care. In fact, she was so upset that she wanted to cry. Lin Shihao had always kept these things from her and never told her. It was hard for her to imagine how a proud man like him could be mocked by others and deliberately made difficult for by his superiors, but he could only endure it. In front of her, he had to act as if nothing had happened. How much pain must his heart be in? The 1-month deadline was getting closer and closer. Yi Siki watched him leave early and return late every day. He was so busy that even if he hid it well, she could see a trace of fatigue and worry between his brows. Sometimes, he would come home in the wee hours of the morning with a faint smell of tobacco on his body. He thought she was asleep, but in fact, she had her back to him. She clenched her teeth and cried silently. In fact, not only were the Lin family suffering, but Bai Jiao also didn't feel good. Bai Jiao was a good doctor with noble medical ethics. He treated patients and saved people all his life. He didn't expect that when he was old, he would do such a disgraceful thing to force others. However, he only had one daughter. He couldn't watch her destroy herself. He had talked to his daughter before and knew that she had always liked Lin Shihao. He was a good man, but he was also a father. He wanted his daughter to be happy. In the last few days before the deadline, Bai Jiao made a private appointment with Yi Siki. He said, "Mrs. Lin, the child in Mei Wei's stomach is already more than 5 months old. I can't let her be ridiculed without any status. I hope you can divorce Lin Shihao as soon as possible." Yi Siki looked calmly at the kind-looking old man in front of her and said calmly, "Director Bai, I can't decide on a divorce alone." Bai Jiao sighed. "I won't hide it from you. Actually, I don't want to take Lin Shihao to court. That will only make both our families look bad. However, if he is determined to not give Mei Wei an explanation, I will continue to make a fuss even if I have to sacrifice my old face. Mrs. Lin, the only person who can turn this situation around is you. If you initiate a divorce, there is still a chance for things to turn around. You don't want to see your husband's reputation ruined, do you?" Everyone was forcing her, as if Lin Shihao's reputation was ruined because of her. But the funny thing was that even she was forcing herself. Because, just as they said, she didn't want to see his reputation ruined. Xia Dong returned from Rome. She had recovered from her serious illness, had a new daughter, and had reconciled with Bailey Han. Yi Siki was very happy for her, and the two of them agreed to go to the hot spring to catch up. While they were soaking in the hot spring, Xia Dong asked Yi Siki if she had been doing well for the past 6 months. "We might have to get a divorce." Yi Siki closed her eyes and said calmly. Only she knew the storm in her heart. Xia Dong approached her and asked, "Yezi, do you still love him?" She sniffled and almost cried. She said softly, "So what if I love him? Love can't withstand so much hurt. Xia, you don't know how tired I am. I'm really tired." She had been forced to a dead end by them and didn't want to persist any longer. At least this way, she could protect Lin Shihao. After leaving the hot spring resort, Xia Dong asked the driver, Old Chen, to send Yi Siki home first. After the two of them hugged and said goodbye, Yi Siki held the gift Xia Dong had brought back from abroad and stood at the intersection. She smiled and waved as she watched the car drive away. The closer she got to home, the fainter the joy of reuniting with her good friend after a long separation faded until it completely disappeared. Her empty heart was filled with sadness. Today was Saturday. Lin Shihao had been called to the hospital to work overtime. To him, there were no days off now. Nyo Nyo was doing her homework in her room. When she heard the door open, the little girl immediately turned around and smiled in surprise. "Mommy, you're back. Did Auntie Xia buy me a gift?" Yi Siki smiled. "I didn't expect our Nyo Nyo to have the ability to predict the future. Here, this is from your Auntie Xia." She placed several beautifully wrapped boxes in her arms on her daughter's bed. Nyo Nyo cheered happily. She put down her pen, ran to the bedside, and happily opened the gift boxes. The first box contained a beautiful white princess dress, and the second box contained a Barbie doll. "Wow, it's so beautiful. I love it." Nyo Nyo jumped up and down happily. Yi Siki looked at her innocent and cute daughter and felt a wave of sadness in her heart. Although she had already decided to divorce, she couldn't bring herself to say it to her daughter. The doorbell rang. Yi Siki quickly wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes and smiled. "Nyo Nyo, we have guests. Mommy will open the door. You stay in the room and call Auntie Xia to thank her for the gift." Yi Siki opened the door to see Unruly standing at the door with an unfriendly expression. She smiled. "Mom, you're here." Unruly changed her shoes and walked straight to the living room without looking at her. She grumbled unhappily, "The deadline is almost up. Are you determined to send Shihao to jail?" Yi Siki clenched her fists. "Mom, let's talk in the bedroom." She was worried that her daughter would come out of the room and overhear their conversation. Unruly glanced at Nyo Nyo's room. She didn't say anything and followed her into the master bedroom. Yi Siki poured her a cup of tea and sat in the chair opposite her. She bit her lip and said unhurriedly, "Mom, I agree to divorce Shihao, but I have a condition." When Unruly heard this, her expression softened and her tone became much gentler. "Tell me. I can give you the car and the house." Yi Siki shook her head. "I don't want any of these things. I just want Nyo Nyo's custody." Unruly's expression changed slightly. "You're a woman. What ability do you have to support Nyo Nyo? Nyo Nyo can live a better life with her father. As long as you give up Nyo Nyo's custody, I'll satisfy you no matter how much compensation you want." Yi Siki looked into her eyes and said calmly, "No amount of money can bring back my daughter. I don't want anything. I just want my daughter." Unruly frowned. "Since you don't want anything, how are you going to support Nyo Nyo?" Yi Siki's lips curled. "With my current monthly salary, it won't be difficult to support Nyo Nyo and me." Unruly counted with her fingers and said, "Don't think of things as so simple. Housing, travel, daily necessities, and the child's education and clothes. Which of these doesn't need money? Nyo Nyo is my biological granddaughter. I'll provide her with better education and living conditions. You can't provide her with these things. Siki, even if it's for Nyo Nyo's sake, you should let her live with her father." "Mom, you don't have to persuade me anymore. I've already made up my mind. If you don't agree to my request, then I can't divorce Shihao." Yi Siki smiled faintly. "Mom, don't be too greedy. You can only choose between your son and your granddaughter." She had already done a lot of multiple-choice questions. It was time for them to do the multiple-choice questions. Unruly's expression was ugly. Her fingers gripped the armrest of the chair tightly. After a long silence, she finally compromised and said, "It's fine if you don't want the house and car. I'll give you 200,000. This money is for Nyo Nyo's custody. If you need money, you can look for me anytime." Perhaps this was the only way to ease her conscience. Yi Siki said, "Okay." She wouldn't take the initiative to fight for these things, but if they were willing to give it to her, she wouldn't refuse because she and the child had to live. "Then when are you going to get a divorce?" There were only 2 days left until the deadline set by Jiao. "I'll prepare the divorce agreement today. The Civil Affairs Bureau isn't open on the weekend. We'll go get the divorce certificate next Monday." Unruly sighed. "Siki, to be honest, I remember all the good you've done for me and Shihao all these years. It's indeed my fault for finding trouble with you sometimes. I'm a narrow-minded person with an impatient temper. Please don't take it to heart if I've said anything that hurt you to heart. If I wasn't forced, I wouldn't want to be some evil mother-in-law and drive a wedge between you two." Yi Siki smiled faintly. Don't worry, I won't blame you. I can only blame myself for not being fated to be with Shihao. Jiang Rulin held her hand and tightened it. Her eyes reddened slightly. Siki, Mom has let you down? Yi Siki smiled. It's okay, Mom. I won't be able to visit you often in the future. Take care of yourself. As she wished, her daughter-in-law agreed to the divorce. Jiang Rulin didn't feel happy. Instead, she felt a little sad. To be honest, Siki was a good daughter-in-law, but it was a pity that they weren't fated to be together. When Jiang Rulin left, her eyes were red, but Yi Siki didn't shed a single tear. Since they were going to break up, they should do it cleanly. She prepared the divorce agreement and signed her name on it. She planned to tell Lin Shihao about the divorce tomorrow. Come and see. Song Shu 566. Chapter 432. Lin Shihao worked until late into the night before returning home. He opened the door and found Yi Siki sitting on the sofa waiting for him. He quickly changed his shoes and walked over to her. His voice was slightly hoarse as he said, "Honey, didn't I tell you not to wait for me? Are you tired?" Yi Siki pursed her lips and smiled. She moved closer to him and wrapped her arms around his waist, hugging him tightly. His body still carried the chill of the night. His handsome brows relaxed and a gentle smile appeared in his deep eyes. He kissed her hair gently. She leaned on his chest and listened to his deep and powerful heartbeat. Her heart ached, but she had a faint smile on her face. "Hubby, are you hungry? I made supper for you." He placed his broad palm on her waist and laughed deeply. "I wasn't hungry at first, but now that you mention it, I'm suddenly a little hungry." She looked up and kissed his thin chin. "Take a shower first. I'll heat up the supper." He ruffled her hair and smiled affectionately. By the time Yi Siki brought out the supper, he had already taken a shower and changed into white home clothes. The gentle light made him look even more handsome, gentle and elegant. His chiseled face was even thinner and there was a faint smile on his thin lips. He quietly watched her walk towards him from afar. She had made him oatmeal, which had the effect of dispelling his restlessness and promoting sleep. The porridge was very fragrant and soft. After drinking half a bowl of porridge, his entire stomach felt warm and even his tired body seemed to relax a lot. She quietly nestled in his arms and listened to the ticking sound of the clock on the wall. Her heart was filled with desolation. If only time could stop at this moment forever, how good would that be? She hugged his waist with both hands and slowly closed her eyes. She used her heart to feel the warmth of his body and listen to his heartbeat. She greedily breathed in the unique faint fragrance on his body. She wanted to engrave all of this in her mind because after tomorrow he would no longer belong to her. Lin Shihao thought she had fallen asleep and smiled gently. He then carried her up and placed her on the bed. The moment he touched the bed, Yi Siki uneasily opened her eyes and hugged him even tighter in a panic. "Don't be afraid. I'm here." Seeing her uneasy gaze, Lin Shihao's heart ached. He took the opportunity to lie beside her and pull her into his arms. Yi Siki couldn't sleep the whole night. She heard his steady breathing and knew that he had fallen asleep. She reached out her hand and stroked his well-defined cheek. It didn't matter that she couldn't see his face clearly in the dark night. She had already used her fingers to engrave him in her heart. The next morning, when Lin Shihao woke up, Yi Siki had already prepared breakfast. When he came out of the bedroom, she was wearing an apron and was busy in the kitchen. She turned her head and smiled brightly at him. "Hubby, you can have breakfast after washing up." He smiled and felt a little distressed. "Why don't you sleep a little longer? I want to watch you go to work." She washed her hands and brought the breakfast to the table. She urged him, "Hurry up and wash up. The breakfast will be cold later." Lin Shihao was about to go to work. Yi Siki wrapped a scarf around him and kissed him on the lips. Then she hugged him. "Hubby, go to work. I'll miss you." "Honey, I'll miss you too." Lin Shihao kissed her forehead and reluctantly let go of her. If he knew that this was their farewell kiss, he definitely wouldn't have left. Yi Siki stood in the corridor and watched him enter the elevator. The elevator door slowly closed and his handsome figure disappeared. She silently turned around and locked the door, crying silently. Yesterday afternoon, she had already rented a small 2-bedroom apartment near the company. It cost her half a month's salary. There was a bed, a wardrobe, a washing machine, an air conditioner, and other appliances. She only needed to bring her suitcase in and she could move in. After Nyo finished breakfast, Yisiki squatted in front of her and said softly, Nyo, from today onwards, you and Mommy will move out, okay? Nyo's beautiful big eyes widened. But is Daddy coming with us? No, it's just the two of us. Daddy will still live here. With every word she said, her heart felt like it was being cut by a knife. Nyo was stunned and suddenly burst into tears. Mommy, why are you two living separately? Are you getting a divorce? Is it because Grandma doesn't like me, so she wants you to divorce Daddy? Yisiki's heart ached. She hugged her daughter tightly. Nyo, Daddy and Mommy are divorcing not because Grandma doesn't like you. Why? Why are you getting a divorce? I don't want you to get a divorce. Mommy, don't divorce, okay? Nyo cried and looked up at her pitifully with her big wet eyes. She kept begging her. Mommy, don't divorce. Nyo, listen to Mommy. Yisiki held her daughter's tear-stained face and coaxed her gently. Even if Daddy and Mommy divorce, you're still our Xiaobao. We'll still love you like before. You can come back to see Daddy often. No, I don't want to. I don't want you two to be separated. Nyo cried until she was out of breath. Her little face was red and her little chest was heaving violently. Her heartbroken look made Yisiki's heart ache to the extreme. Yisiki hugged her daughter and coaxed her. She tried to persuade her, but she couldn't persuade her to accept reality. Time passed, and the people from the moving company would soon come to help her move the luggage. However, Nyo was still throwing a tantrum in her arms and refused to leave. Yisiki had no choice but to harden her heart. She held her daughter's tender shoulders and said in a hoarse voice, Nyo, if you don't want to leave with Mommy, then stay here with Daddy. Her daughter had been closer to her since she was young and relied on her more. When she heard her words, she immediately panicked and cried loudly. She hugged her tightly and refused to let go. Nyo, Mommy also can't bear to leave your Daddy. However, if Mommy continues to be with Daddy, he will become a criminal and even go to jail. Do you want to see Daddy go to jail? Yisiki felt that she was being extremely cruel to force Nyo to accept these very realistic things. Nyo didn't quite understand. Although she didn't know why Daddy would go to jail if her parents were together, she didn't want Daddy to become a criminal. Therefore, she cried bitterly for a long time and made a racket for a long time. In the end, she accepted this reality. When Yisiki carried her daughter and left the home that they had lived in for 7 years, she and Nyo both shed tears at the same time. Nyo's eyes were swollen like walnuts. She leaned on her shoulder and didn't say a word. She just cried silently. The moving company moved their luggage to their new home. Nyo's new bedroom was much smaller than the previous one. She sat silently on the bed and hugged the teddy bear that Daddy gave her for Christmas. She secretly wiped away her tears. Yisiki forced herself to stay awake and tidied up their luggage in the living room. She looked up and saw her daughter's thin and small back. Her heart ached. Their divorce was a huge blow to her daughter. She would love her daughter even more in the future and slowly heal the hurt in her heart. A melodious ringtone sounded. It was Xiao Tianxing. Do you have time? Come out for a cup of coffee? Yisiki looked up at her daughter and quickly walked into her bedroom. She lowered her voice and said, I'm unpacking my luggage now. I don't have time. Unpacking your luggage? What are you doing? Are you going out to relax again? She paused. Nyo and I moved out. I'm planning to get a divorce. Xiao Tianxing was silent for 2 seconds. Are you serious? She nodded. I've already left the divorce agreement with him. Xiao Tianxing frowned and said in a deep voice, Tell me the address. I'll go to your place. Yisiki gripped her phone uncomfortably. Why are you coming? My place is a mess. I haven't tidied it up yet. Xiao Tianxing sounded impatient. Don't think too much. I'm worried about Nyo. Tell me the address. The corners of Yi Siki's mouth twitched helplessly. In the end, she told him her address. She had just tidied up her and Nyonyo's clothes, took a mop, and was about to clean when the doorbell rang. Xiao Tiancheng was wearing a black coat, standing tall and handsome at the door. After he entered the door, he walked around as if he had returned to his own home. Finally, he smacked his lips. It's passable. It's just a little small. How big is the place for just the two of us to live in? Yi Siki was a little speechless. Okay, you do what you need to do. I'll go see Nyonyo. Xiao Tianxing waved his hand and left her behind. He went straight to Nyonyo's room. Nyonyo had heard someone coming, but she was still immersed in her sadness and didn't want to talk to anyone. She sat on the bed in a daze, holding a big furry bear in her arms. Xiao Tianxing stood at the door and felt his heart ache when he saw her lonely little figure. After 2 seconds of silence, his lips curled up into a bright smile. He said in a light tone, "Little Nyonyo, Uncle Xiao is here. Long time no see. Did you miss me?" He squatted in front of Nyonyo and realized that her eyes were swollen like peaches. There were still traces of tears on her fair little face. Her chest was rising and falling slightly as she suppressed her sobs. Her little nose was red from rubbing, like a cute chili. His heart ached as if it was being pricked by needles. He rubbed her soft hair lovingly and said softly, "Nyonyo, Uncle Xiao will take you out to play, okay?" Nyonyo didn't say anything. Her long eyelashes fluttered slightly and bean-sized tears rolled down again. "Nyonyo, be good. Don't cry." Uncle Xiao, who had always been sharp-tongued, felt that he was at a loss for words for the first time. He didn't know how to make the little girl happy, so he could only hug her and gently pat her back. He said over and over again, "Be good. Don't cry." Xiao Tianxing didn't know if it was because his embrace was too similar to Lin Shihao's embrace or because she was tired from crying. After maintaining this position for half an hour, he suddenly realized that she had fallen asleep. Her little head was tightly pressed against his chest. A pair of tender little hands were firmly grabbing his clothes. This was a sign of insecurity. Add Hongcha 866. Chapter 433. After Yi Siki finished cleaning, she walked to Nyonyo's room and found Xiao Tianxing sitting stiffly on the bed with a sleeping Nyonyo in his arms. She lowered her voice and said, "Put the child down. Aren't you tired carrying her like this?" Xiao Tianxing also lowered his voice. "I'm not tired. I'm afraid that I'll wake her up if I move." Yi Siki then noticed that Nyonyo was clutching his clothes with both hands. She roughly estimated that he had been in this position for at least an hour. How could he not be tired? She thought for a moment and said softly, "You should put her on the bed. Nyonyo is sleeping soundly. She won't wake up." Sure. Xiao Tianxing was afraid that she would wake Nyonyo up, so he gave her a look and said softly, "I'm hungry. Go and cook." Yi Siki was a little touched when she saw that he was persevering so hard and refusing to give up. She shook her head and didn't try to persuade him anymore. She walked into the kitchen and prepared to cook. Suddenly, she realized that they had just moved in and didn't even have kitchen utensils. Xiao Tianxing noticed that Yi Siki had returned to Nyonyo's room. He lifted his chin and asked her with his eyes, "What's the matter?" She shrugged helplessly and said softly, "We don't have kitchen utensils. Let's order takeout for lunch today." He raised his eyebrows and didn't object. Yi Siki found a restaurant with good reviews online and called to order takeout. Then she continued to tidy up the room. Nyonyo slept until the takeout arrived. She rubbed against Xiao Tianxing's arms in a daze and called out, "Daddy," softly. Xiao Tianxing's heart trembled. A thought popped up in his mind. It would be great if such an adorable child was his daughter. Nyonyo didn't hear a response. She rubbed her sleepy eyes and looked up to see Xiao Tianxing. She blinked her slightly red and swollen eyes. "Uncle Xiao." "It's me, Nyonyo. Did you sleep enough?" Xiao Tianxing smiled and rubbed her hair. She nodded in a daze. "Then let's go eat now. Your mommy has ordered a lot of your favorite dishes." Xiao Tianxing stood up with her in his arms and walked to the living room. At the dinner table, Xiao Tianxing told a lot of jokes to make Nyonyo happy. Nyo finally smiled. Yi Siki looked at him gratefully. He raised his eyebrows proudly and looked very arrogant. Yi Siki was also amused by his childish expression. After eating and resting for a while, Yi Siki planned to go shopping at the supermarket. She had already made a long list, and Xiao Tianxing insisted on going with them. There were many people in the supermarket. Most of them were there to buy New Year goods. Xiao Tianxing pushed the shopping cart while Yi Siki held Nyonyo's hand. At first glance, they looked like a family of three. Yi Siki stood in front of the shelves with Nyonyo. When choosing goods, she always smiled and asked for Nyonyo's opinion. She deliberately teased her to interact with her so that she could pull her out of her sad mood. Nyonyo, look at this pillow. Isn't it cute? Yi Siki picked up a tanuki pillow and waved her arms with a smile. Do you like it? If you like it, we'll buy it. Nyonyo puffed up her cheeks and blinked her big eyes. She pointed at the pillow on the shelf with her pink finger. I like the Easy Bear pillow. Okay, then we'll buy the Easy Bear. Yi Siki put down the tanuki and picked up the Easy Bear pillow. She handed it to her daughter and smiled. Nyonyo, help mommy carry it, okay? Nyonyo nodded and obediently followed her mother with the Easy Bear pillow. Her attention was gradually attracted by the dazzling array of goods. In addition, Xiao Tianxing deliberately made her happy, so she temporarily forgot about her sadness. Pots, pans, and daily necessities. The things they bought almost filled the trunk of Xiao Tianxing's car. He worked hard without complaint, carrying several shopping bags on his shoulders and finally sending the mother and daughter upstairs. After they finished packing, it was already past 5 in the afternoon. Yi Siki smiled at Xiao Tianxing and said, "Thank you for your hard work today. Let me treat you to a meal. I know a good restaurant nearby." Xiao Tianxing shrugged. Okay, I'm hungry too. After the meal, Yi Siki called the waiter to pay the bill. The waiter looked at Xiao Tianxing and smiled. Madam, your husband has already paid the bill. Xiao Tianxing's lips curved, but he didn't explain further. Madam? Sir? What did this have to do with anything? Yi Siki was both embarrassed and amused. She explained, You've misunderstood. I'm friends with this gentleman. The waiter quickly apologized. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I'm very sorry. It's okay. After the waiter left, Yi Siki complained, Didn't we agree that it was my treat? Why did you secretly pay the bill? Xiao Tianxing raised his eyebrows. I've never let a woman pay the bill. Yi Siki was speechless. You're such a male chauvinist, he chuckled. This is called gentlemanly behavior. On the way home, Nyonyo fell asleep in Yi Siki's arms. Xiao Tianxing looked sideways at the mother and daughter and whispered, It's almost the spring festival. Are you planning to spend it with the child alone? Yi Siki felt a tinge of bitterness in her heart. She said calmly, If it's just the two of us, wouldn't it be too lonely? There's no need for a divorced woman to make herself so miserable. I'm planning to bring Nyonyo back to my parents' home for the spring festival. It's just that I haven't thought of how to tell my parents about the divorce. It's better to deal with the pain quickly than to prolong it. It's better to tell them sooner. Xiao Tianxing's deep eyes had a tinge of pity. They're your parents. I think they'll understand you. I just don't want them to worry about me. Ever since I was young, they've always worried about me. I thought that after getting married, their lives would be easier. Her tone carried a hint of tiredness and sadness. In our parents' eyes, we'll always be children. Xiao Tianxing chuckled. Just like you. When you're 60 years old, Nyonyo will already be a parent. In your heart, she'll still be your child, right? She smiled. That's true. No matter how old Nyonyo is, in my heart, she'll always be a little girl who needs my protection. He smiled. If you don't want your parents to worry, then let them know that you're living well. Divorce isn't the end of life. It's the beginning of a new life. Siki, you're a very strong woman. You can do it. Her eyes welled up. I can do it. Xiao Tianxing sent the mother and daughter home. Before he left, he nagged her to lock the door and close the windows. She nodded repeatedly. He was still worried, so he took her phone and set his phone number to 1. Then he returned the phone to her. I've already set my number to speed dial. If there's anything, feel free to contact me. I know. Hurry home. It's cold and the roads are dark. Drive carefully. He smiled. If I don't leave, you'll push me out of the door, won't you? She was embarrassed. No way. I just don't want to waste any more of your time. His smile widened. He suddenly took a step forward and pulled her into his arms. He hugged her tightly and whispered in her ear, "Take care of yourself and Nyonyo. Good night." Her face was burning hot. She reached out to push him away, but he had already let go of her. He raised his eyebrows and left happily. She was amused and angry at the same time. He finally left. She was the only one left in the empty living room. She glanced at Nyonyo's room and suddenly felt a little sad. She hugged her knees and sat on the sofa in a daze. She didn't know how long she had been sitting there in a daze. Her phone suddenly rang. Her body trembled and she snapped back to her senses. She glanced at the caller ID and her heart jumped. Shihao. She pressed the answer button and went back to her bedroom. When Lin Shihao came home from work, he realized that Yisiki and Nyonyo were gone. Their clothes and daily necessities were also gone. He immediately had a bad feeling. He was so nervous that his heart almost stopped beating. His fingers trembled as he dialed Yisiki's number. When he heard her familiar voice on the other end of the phone, he gripped the phone tightly and tried to control his emotions. "Honey, where did you and Nyonyo go? When are you coming back?" Yisiki's eyes glistened with tears. She said slowly, "Shihao, I left a divorce agreement on the bedside table on the right. I've already signed it. Take some time tomorrow and we'll go and settle the divorce procedures." Lin Shihao quickly ran to the bedside table and opened the bedside table. Indeed, there was a divorce agreement lying inside. The blood in his body seemed to have stopped flowing. His whole body was icy cold. His chest rose and fell rapidly. He clenched his fists tightly. His deep eyes were surging with shocking anger. "I don't agree to the divorce. You promised me that you would stay with me until the end. Yisiki, how dare you lie to me?" Yisiki's eyelashes fluttered. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She tried her best to calm her voice. "Shihao, I'm sorry. I can't take it anymore. Meiwei's child is almost 6 months old. I can't accept another woman's child calling you daddy. So, let's get a divorce." Her words were like a basin of cold water that instantly extinguished his burning anger. He took 2 steps back and slammed heavily against the wall. His back was almost numb from the pain. She had once said that if Meiwei insisted on giving birth to the child, she would leave with Nyonyo. She wasn't just saying it. She really couldn't accept it. Yet, he was forcing her to accept this reality. Was he too cruel? There was dead silence on the phone. Yisiki started to feel uneasy. She softly called out his name. "Shihao." Lin Shihao felt as if someone had opened a big hole in his chest. The cold wind blew into his chest, causing him to shiver from the cold. He gritted his teeth hard and said in a low and hoarse voice, "I won't agree to the divorce. I won't agree to it even if I die." Yisiki bit her lip and held back her sobs. She slowly said, "Lin Shihao, let me go. Don't make me hate you." Lin Shihao's eyes were red. He stared fixedly at their wedding photo on the wall and said slowly, "Then hate me." Even if she hated him, he didn't want to let her go. She was his wife. She would be his forever. Attention, Hongcha 866. Chapter 434. Yisiki's face was covered in tears. Her voice trembled as she said, "Why are you doing this? Don't you know that I don't love you anymore? I'll wait for you at the Civil Affairs Bureau at 9 tomorrow morning." After saying this, she immediately hung up the phone and started to cry bitterly. She didn't dare to cry too loudly for fear of waking her daughter up. She covered her mouth with both hands and her chest tightened as if it was about to explode. She felt so uncomfortable that she couldn't even breathe properly. Lin Shihao still had a lot to say to her, but before he could ask her where she and Nyonyo were staying, she hung up the phone. He quickly dialed her number again, but her phone was turned off. Lin Shihao's emotions were extremely complicated. Anger and heartache intertwined together and made him feel suffocated. He was like a violent lion as he punched the wall with all his might. The veins on the back of his hand were throbbing and his knuckles were turning white. His tall and straight body was trembling from his anger. The sudden burst of coldness in his eyes made one shudder in fear. Yi Siki specially took a day off to prepare for the divorce. She sat in the lobby of the Civil Affairs Bureau and waited for more than an hour, but Lin Shihao didn't show up. She took out her phone and dialed his number. After 3 or 4 rings, the call went through. She said softly, "Shihao, I'm waiting for you at the Civil Affairs Bureau. Come over quickly." She didn't know that Lin Shihao was standing outside the Civil Affairs Bureau and looking at her through the glass door. His thin lips were pursed and his expression was cold. His voice was cold as he said, "I said before that I won't agree to the divorce. You don't have to wait for me anymore. No matter how long you wait, I won't appear." She frowned. "Shihao, don't be like this." Beep beep, he had already hung up the phone. Yi Siki sat there in a daze. She held the phone in her hand and her heart was in a mess. He knew that the marriage couldn't be maintained, so why did he persist? Wasn't he afraid that his reputation would be ruined? She sat there in a daze and didn't know what to do. Although she hadn't gotten the divorce certificate yet, she should tell Bai Jiao that they were about to divorce so that he would give up the idea of suing Lin Shihao. Thinking of this, she immediately called Bai Jiao. "Dean Bai, let me tell you, Shihao and I have decided to divorce. We are going through the divorce procedures." "I understand. I'll deal with it. Mrs. Lin, I'm very sorry that things have come to this." Yi Siki smirked and said calmly, "I'm no longer Mrs. Lin. Your daughter will become the new Mrs. Lin." Bai Jiao paused. "I'm sorry." Her tone was very calm. "There's no need to apologize. I just hope that you will keep your promise and not embarrass him anymore." "I will." Lin Shihao stood outside the glass door and stared at her back. He saw her sitting there in a daze for a long time. He saw her making a call. He saw her putting her phone away and picking up her handbag to leave. He quickly hid behind the stone pillar. She walked to the side of the road and hailed a taxi. He quickly ran to his car and got in. His eyes followed the taxi closely. Yi Siki's original plan was to go through the divorce procedures in the morning and then take Nyonyo back to her parents' home to tell them about her divorce. Now that the divorce had not been finalized and she didn't want to waste this day of vacation, she decided to take the child back to her parents' home. The taxi drove her directly into the neighborhood and stopped under the building where she lived. "Thank you, sir." Yi Siki took the change from the driver and turned to go upstairs. She didn't notice Lin Shihao's car following her into the neighborhood. Yi Siki opened the door and saw Nyonyo hugging the stuffed bear and watching cartoons on the sofa. She smiled. "Nyonyo, we're going to Grandma's house today. Hurry up and get changed." Nyonyo replied with an "oh." She put the stuffed bear on the sofa and went back to her room to get changed. At this moment, the doorbell rang. Yi Siki looked through the peephole and her heart tightened. It was Lin Shihao. How did he find this place? "Honey, open the door. I know you're inside." When Lin Shihao walked into the corridor, he realized that the elevator had already gone up and stopped on the 5th floor. He guessed that Siki lived on the 5th floor. There were 2 families living on the 5th floor. He had already knocked on the door of the opposite house. There was an old lady living inside, so he concluded that Siki lived in this house. Yi Siki gritted her teeth. She decided to pretend that there was no one in the house and refused to open the door for him. Lin Shihao's heart was burning with anger. He was too lazy to press the doorbell. He knocked on the door loudly and shouted, "Yi Siki, if you don't open the door for me, I'll keep knocking." Yi Siki covered her ears with both hands and thought to herself, "I didn't hear anything. I didn't hear anything. Mommy, is Daddy knocking on the door?" Nyonyo came out after changing her clothes. When she heard the knocking, a surprised smile immediately appeared on her little face. Yi Siki's expression was very ugly. She shook her head and said, "No, Nyonyo, you heard wrong." Just as she finished speaking, Lin Shihao shouted again, "Yi Siki, open the door for me." Nyonyo pouted and said, "It's obviously Daddy's voice. Mommy, why don't you open the door for Daddy?" Yi Siki was very helpless. She didn't know how to answer her. "Nyonyo, you're inside, right? Daddy is here." "Good girl, hurry up and open the door for Daddy. Since one path didn't work, Lin Shihao tried another. Daddy, I'm here. I'll open the door for you right away. Nyo ran to the door excitedly. Yi Siki hugged her waist and lifted her off the ground, preventing her from opening the door. Nyo struggled to move her little body, trying to struggle out of her embrace. However, her arms were wrapped tightly around her. Nyo was anxious and sad. She burst into tears and said, "Mommy, what are you doing? Why won't you open the door for Daddy? I miss Daddy so much. Mommy is bad. Mommy is a bad person." Nyo's tears kept falling. She wiped the tears on her face with the back of her soft hand, looking very pitiful. Yi Siki's heart ached. The man outside was still shouting and yelling for her to open the door. She was annoyed and confused. In the end, she compromised with the father and daughter pair and opened the door with Nyo in her arms. As soon as the door opened, Nyo immediately stretched out her arms towards Lin Shihao and cried, "Daddy, I missed you so much." Lin Shihao didn't allow any explanation and snatched Nyo from Yi Siki's arms. He hugged her tightly and kissed her cheek. "Nyo, be good. Daddy is here. Daddy missed you too." Nyo lay in his arms and cried sadly. She sobbed and said, "Daddy, don't divorce, okay? I don't want to be separated from you. We won't divorce. Daddy and Mommy will never divorce. Be good, Nyo. Don't cry anymore. You're making Daddy's heart ache." Lin Shihao carried his daughter to the living room and coaxed her gently. Yi Siki closed the door. With her back facing the father and daughter pair, she secretly wiped away the tears at the corners of her eyes. Lin Shihao hugged his daughter and comforted her patiently. After making his daughter happy, he kissed her cheek and said gently, "Nyo, Daddy and Mommy have something to talk about. Go back to your room and do your homework first, okay?" "Okay." She smiled sweetly and kissed him back on the cheek. She jumped out of his arms and onto the floor and walked towards her room. Lin Shihao smiled as he watched her petite figure disappear into the distance. After walking for some distance, she suddenly turned around and stared at Yi Siki with her big beautiful eyes. She puffed up her cheeks and said angrily, "Mommy, you can't chase Daddy out when I'm not paying attention." Yi Siki pursed her lips helplessly. "I know. I won't." She grinned and smiled brightly. "Then I'm relieved. I'm going back to my room." Seeing her skipping back to her room, Yi Siki and Lin Shihao felt very sad. 2 days ago, their daughter was still Wu Yu's carefree little girl. But now, she was so sensible that it made their heart ache. Yi Siki poured a cup of tea and placed it in front of Lin Shihao. Then, she sat across from him and pursed her lips, remaining silent. Lin Shihao's deep gaze fell on her body. He hadn't seen her for a day, but it felt like he hadn't seen her for a year. He missed her so much that his heart ached. Last night, he lay alone on the large bed that belonged to them and couldn't sleep the entire night. He hugged her pillow in his arms and it emitted a faint lemon scent. It was the scent of the shampoo they were used to using. There was also a faint scent of her on the quilt. He was surrounded by her scent, and his longing for her didn't lessen at all. Instead, he missed her even more. His burning gaze made her feel uncomfortable. She lowered her eyes and stroked the short hair by her ear, trying to say something to break the heavy atmosphere. "How did you know I live here?" She tucked her hair behind her ear, revealing her pink and small ears and half of her fair neck. His deep gaze followed her movements and became increasingly passionate. He clenched his fingers slightly and said in a deep voice, "I've been outside the Civil Affairs Bureau the entire time. I followed your taxi and found this place." Yi Siki widened her eyes in surprise and looked up at him. "Since you're at the Civil Affairs Bureau, why didn't you come out to see me?" "Because I don't want to divorce you. Don't mention divorce again in the future." Lin Shihao's obsidian-like eyes surged with pain. His voice was low and slow with a hint of pleading. "Wifey, I know I've broken your heart. I also know you can't accept that child, but I love you. I really can't leave you. Let's start over, okay? We're already done. There's no way to start over." Yi Siki gritted her teeth and forced herself to say something ruthless. Lin Shihao suddenly stood up. She was shocked and didn't know what he wanted to do. In the next second, he was already sitting beside her and hugging her tightly in his arms. His voice was low. "Wifey, let's leave a city and go somewhere else. We can definitely start over." She bitterly tugged at the corner of her lips. "Can we leave? Our parents are all here, and your career is also here." He hugged her even tighter. "My career is far less important to me than you and Nyonyo. As for our parents, as long as we have the heart, we can take care of them no matter how far they are. Let's go to Sea City. That's where we went to university. Don't you like that city a lot?" He described the future so beautifully that she was almost moved. Beauty novel, Hongcha 866. Chapter 435. He described the future to be so beautiful that she was almost moved. However, reality was reality. The difficulties in front of them were like an abyss. If they weren't careful, they would fall to the bottom and not even their bones would be left. She didn't want him to be punished by the law, nor did she want him to lose his reputation. She didn't even want to tell him the real reason for the divorce because she didn't want to hurt his pride. She leaned into his embrace and listened to his strong heartbeat. She slowly closed her eyes and said softly, "We can't go back. No matter where we go, we can't go back to the past. We haven't tried yet. How do you know we can't? Wife, give our feelings one more chance." His arm tightened around her waist. "I'm sorry. I have no choice." She bit her lip and said slowly, "I don't love you anymore." "You're lying. You clearly love me. You want to force me to divorce, so you're saying that on purpose." Lin Shihao suddenly held her shoulders and stared at her with his sharp eyes. "I'm not lying. I'm telling the truth. I don't love you anymore." His eyes suddenly changed. Shock, pain, like a sudden storm, shrouded him heavily. She looked at his sorrowful expression and her chest felt uncomfortable, but she calmly met his gaze. He slowly let go of her shoulders and leaned heavily against the sofa. He didn't speak for a long time. "Shihao, let's let go of each other." She wanted to touch his cold face with her fingers, but she restrained herself. "You want to leave me that badly?" His eyes were as dark as the sea and filled with pain. That simple and powerful word was like a sharp knife that stabbed into his heart. His face was ashen and his entire body emitted a cold and furious aura. He stared into her eyes and said word by word, "If you want me to let go, I'll have to die." He angrily slammed the door and left. If he stayed for a second longer, he might not be able to control himself and hurt her. Like a wild beast, he suddenly left. The door closed with a bang. She suddenly trembled. Her hands covered her cheeks, allowing her tears to flow through the gaps between her fingers. Nyo came out of the room and found out that Daddy had left. She cried and made a fuss. Yi Siki lied to her, saying that she and Lin Shihao would not divorce and that they were only living separately temporarily. It was not easy to make her daughter happy. According to the original plan, Yi Siki brought her daughter back to her parents' home. After sending her daughter away, she confessed to her parents about the impending divorce. Zhou Rongfang and Yi Weiliang were both shocked and upset. Zhou Rongfang advised her, "Siki, think about it again. Even if it's for Nyonyo, you can't make such a hasty decision." "Mom, I have no other choice. If I don't get a divorce, Bai Jiao will sue Shihao in court. I really can't watch him go to jail and be ridiculed by others." Despair raged between her eyebrows. Zhou Rongfang opened her mouth and wanted to say something, but in the end, she didn't say anything. Yi Weiliang was silent for a moment and said in a low voice, "Have you asked for Shihao's opinion? He might not mind going to jail." "It's precisely because he doesn't mind that I can't push him into the fire pit. Bai Jiao knew that we were preparing for a divorce, so he agreed to let Shihao go. I don't want to waste all my previous efforts." Zhou Rongfang wiped her tears. Yi Weiliang smoked nonstop. Ever since Nyonyo was born, he had quit smoking, saying that he didn't want his granddaughter to inhale his secondhand smoke. Now, because of his daughter's divorce, he felt terrible and took out the cigarettes that were meant for guests to smoke. Yi Siki didn't want them to be sad. Instead, she smiled and comforted them. She snatched the cigarette from Yi Weiliang's hand and threw it into the trash can. She said, Dad, Mom, don't worry about me. I have a job now and a daughter. It's pretty good, really. Zhou Rongfang wiped her tears and forced herself to stop crying so that her daughter could be at ease. Yi Weiliang no longer pulled a long face and changed the topic. Siki, it's going to be the new year in a few days. You and Nyo shouldn't stay outside. Just move back in. Yi Siki smiled. I think so too. We'll stay here tonight. Dad, Mom, I hope you don't mind us. Zhou Rongfang smiled reproachfully. You silly child, what are you saying? This is your home. You can stay here as long as you want. I can't wait for you and Nyo to stay with us every day. Mom, you're so nice. Yi Siki hugged her arm and leaned on her shoulder. You're already a mother. Why are you still acting like a child? Although it was a reproach, there was no reproach in her tone, only affection. This was what parents were like. When their child was sad, they wished that they could bear the pain for their child. Yi Siki stayed at home for dinner. In the afternoon, she went back to her rented apartment to pack her luggage and move back to her parents' house. Lin Shihao didn't know that she was moving. After work that night, he didn't go home. Instead, he drove directly to Siki's rented apartment. He knocked on the door for a long time, but no one answered. He thought that Siki was playing the same trick again and pretended not to be home. He stood outside the door for more than an hour. The old lady of the house opposite suddenly opened the door and said, "Young man, don't wait here anymore. My daughter-in-law said that when she went out to sell vegetables this afternoon, she saw your wife carrying her luggage out." Siki went out? Where did she go? Was she avoiding him on purpose? Lin Shihao's heart ached. Did she really not care about him anymore? In the next few days, Yi Siki was very busy. However, every time she had a break, she would take time to contact Lin Shihao to persuade him to settle the divorce procedures. In the end, every time she called him, she would hear a notification saying that his phone was switched off. She felt very helpless. Fortunately, Bai Jiao didn't rush her. She had her own selfish motives and wanted to wait until after the Spring Festival to get a divorce. Even if they couldn't have a reunion dinner together, at least they would still be husband and wife. On the eve of the Spring Festival, Nyo woke up early in the morning and ran to the balcony to wait. Zhou Rongfang hurriedly called out to her, Nyo, it's cold outside. Come in quickly. Don't catch a cold." "I'm not cold, Grandma. I want to wait here for my daddy." Nyo stood on a stool and leaned against the balcony. Zhou Rongfang trembled with fear as she watched. "Oh, my little princess, come down quickly. Look at how dangerous it is here." Zhou Rongfang carried her up and walked into the house. "Grandma, I want to wait for my daddy." Nyo kicked her short legs and muttered unhappily. "Let's sit at home and wait warmly." "Ah, don't be naughty. Be careful that your mommy gets angry." Zhou Rongfang brought up Yi Siki and Nyo immediately became obedient. Yi Weiliang held Nyo by his side. The grandfather and granddaughter pair sat on the sofa and watched TV. Zhou Rongfang went into the kitchen to help her daughter cook. She lowered her voice and said, Nyo was making a fuss about waiting for her dad outside the balcony just now. "Will her dad come today?" Yi Siki paused in her actions of washing the vegetables and smiled. "I don't think so. I haven't been able to contact him these past few days. By the way, Mom, big brother and sister-in-law should be here soon. You should wait in the living room. Leave this to me. They'll be here in a while. I'll do it with you. How can you handle it alone?" Zhou Rongfang rolled up her sleeves and put on an apron. The mother and daughter chatted and laughed as they busied themselves. Yi Siki's phone in her trouser pocket suddenly rang. She quickly wiped her hands and took out her phone. She didn't expect Jiang Ruolin to call. Pressing the answer button, Yi Siki felt a little awkward. She didn't know how to address her. Just as she was hesitating, Jiang Ruolin's urgent voice came through. "Siki, come to the hospital quickly. Shihao has fallen ill." Yi Siki's heart skipped a beat. She tried her best to sound calm. "How did he fall ill?" Jiang Ruolin sighed. "I don't know what's gotten into him recently. He works from morning to night every day and refuses to eat. Even if his body is made of iron, it can't take it. Today, the hospital called and said that he fainted in the office." Yi Siki's face turned pale. "He worked so hard. Did he want to die? He woke up in the afternoon but still refused to eat. We had no choice but to give him in 4 drip. Jiang Rulin paused and said, Siki, I think you're the only one who can persuade him now. Her heart ached, but she didn't agree. It wasn't easy for her to make up her mind to cut off their relationship as husband and wife. If she went to the hospital to see him this time, she was afraid that she would waver. Siki, I know it's very difficult for you to come over to see Shihao, but I really have no other choice. You didn't see it. Shihao is now all skin and bones. Jiang Rulin choked with sobs. Yi Siki imagined him lying on the hospital bed and being given in 4 drip. Her eyes stung. After hesitating for a long time, she said softly, Okay, I'll go over. After ending the call, her eyes were red. Zhou Rongfang, who was standing beside her, guessed what was going on. She sighed and said, Shihao is ill? You should go and see him. After all, you were husband and wife. Mom, I'll go then. Don't tell Nyonyo. Yi Siki took off her apron. Okay, go quickly. Zhou Rongfang waved her hand. When Yi Siki walked to the door, she suddenly called out, Siki, wait. Mom, what's wrong? The chicken soup is ready. Give Shihao a bowl. Zhou Rongfang quickly took out a thermos and washed it. Then, she filled it with chicken soup, closed the lid, and handed it to Siki. The hospital was very deserted. Most of the medical staff had gone home for the new year, leaving only a few staff members on duty. Yi Siki carried the thermos and walked down the empty corridor. Her heart was slightly bleak. Standing at the door of Lin Shihao's ward, she saw Bai Meiwei sitting by his bed, holding a bowl of millet porridge in her hand. She gently urged him to eat. His eyes were closed, as if he was asleep. Yi Siki really wanted to leave, but she couldn't bear to. She saw that Lin Shihao had a tube in the back of his hand. His face was pale and there was stubble on his chin. He looked extremely haggard. She pursed her lips and deliberately walked into the ward with heavy footsteps. Bai Meiwei turned around. When she saw that it was her, her expression turned a little ugly. She supported her slightly protruding belly and stood up. She said to the man lying on the hospital bed, Shihao, Miss Yi has come to see you. Come and see. Song Shu 566. Chapter 436. Lin Shihao suddenly opened his eyes. When he saw Yi Siki, his eyes were filled with complex emotions. Shock, pain, ecstasy, and finally, all of his emotions turned into coldness. He looked at her coldly and said, Are you here to see if I'm dead? Sorry to disappoint you. He had said before that if he wanted a divorce, he would have to die. Since he wasn't dead, he wouldn't agree to a divorce with her. Yi Siki's face turned pale. Only the heavens knew how much the cold words that came out of his mouth hurt her. Bai Meiwei was delighted. She thought that Lin Shihao was cold to Yi Siki because he hated her and wanted to cut ties with her. Her expression didn't look so bad, and her smile became more sincere. She said gently, Shihao, don't be like this. Miss Yi came to see you out of goodwill. You're hurting her heart by saying that. Lin Shihao sneered, Heart? Yi Siki, do you still have a heart? His deep, dark eyes were filled with coldness. It was so cold that it made her heart tremble. She suddenly clenched her fists and walked unhurriedly to the bedside. She placed the thermos in her hand on the bedside table and said calmly, Since you still want to live, don't torture yourself anymore. After saying this, she turned to leave. Lin Shihao's eyes flashed. He glanced at the thermos and shouted, Stop right there. Yi Siki froze. She slowly turned around, her gaze calm. What's the matter? Lin Shihao didn't answer. He turned his gaze to Bai Meiwei and said coldly, Get out. I have something to say to my wife. Bai Meiwei's face was drained of blood, and her lips trembled slightly. Get out, he shouted sternly with a dark expression. Bai Meiwei's body trembled. She bit her lip and looked like she was about to cry. However, Lin Shihao only felt disgust for her. He didn't hide his disgust at all. He frowned and said coldly, Don't you understand what I'm saying? I told you to get out. Yi Siki felt that she had become evil. When she saw Lin Shihao shouting at Bai Meiwei, she was very happy. She lowered her eyes and stared at her toes, pretending not to hear anything. Shihao, what are you doing? Jiang Rulin's figure appeared at the door. She had just gone to the bathroom, and when she came back, she bumped into her son reprimanding Bai Meiwei. She couldn't help but speak up for Bai Meiwei. When she heard that you were sick, Meiwei immediately rushed over from home and personally cooked porridge for you, Mom. Lin Shihao interrupted her unhappily. You and Bai Meiwei can go out first. I have something to talk to Siki about. Jiang Rulin's anger was stuck in her chest, but then she remembered that her son was sick in bed, so she didn't argue with him. She smiled at Siki and said, Siki, Shihao hasn't eaten for many days. You should persuade him to eat something. Siki smiled faintly and said, Okay, I got it. Thank you for your hard work. Jiang Rulin smiled satisfactorily and then looked at Bai Meiwei. Meiwei, let's go out first. When Bai Meiwei left, she looked deeply at Lin Shihao. It was a pity that he was so focused on Siki that he didn't notice her flirtatious gaze. The ward was very quiet. Siki sat by his bed and unscrewed the lid of the thermos. She scooped the chicken soup into a bowl and brought it to his mouth. She ordered matter-of-factly, Open your mouth. Lin Shihao stared at her calm face and gritted his teeth hatefully. Since you don't want me anymore, why do you still care if I live or die? She lifted her eyelids and looked at him indifferently. You don't want me to care about you? Okay, then I'll leave now. She placed the bowl of soup on the bedside table and made a move to get up. A hand grabbed her wrist, and with a sudden tug, she was pulled into his embrace. His arm was like an iron clamp, tightly holding her against his chest. As she leaned against his chest, she realized that he had lost a lot of weight during this period. His bones hurt her face. Her eyes welled up with tears and she gritted her teeth and said, Let go. I won't let go. If I let go, you'll leave. I won't allow you to leave. He was like a rascal. Even his tone was very similar. Lin Shihao, why are you so childish? She felt helpless. She wanted to push him away forcefully, but she was afraid of hurting him. He hugged her even tighter and said in an extremely awkward tone, I'm childish. Tell me, are you still worried about me? She held her breath and said slowly, Don't misunderstand. Your mother asked me to come and see you. His eyes narrowed dangerously. So you didn't want to come at all? She replied. He raised his voice and tried to suppress his emotions. Since you don't care about me, why did you make chicken soup for me? She said softly, My mother asked me to bring it over. Shihao, don't be so childish in the future. Don't torture yourself anymore. Even if I'm not worried, the elders will be. She lowered her head and he couldn't see the pain in her eyes. He buried his head in her neck and greedily breathed in her fragrance. His voice was hoarse and low. Wifey, do you think I did this on purpose so that you would sympathize with me and care about me? His hot breath sprayed on her skin. It was numb and she couldn't help but tremble. He paused for a moment before continuing, That's not it. I worked day and night because I wanted to numb myself with work so that I wouldn't have to think about you. I didn't eat because every time I saw the food, I would think of the food you personally cooked for me. Without you by my side, I can't sleep at night. I can't taste my food, so I decided not to sleep or eat. Siki's eyes were misty with tears. She held back her tears for a long time and forced them back. She said softly, I'm here now. Let's eat. If he didn't eat, his body wouldn't be able to take it anymore. She reached out for the bowl of soup. This time, he didn't stop her. He adjusted his position slightly and hugged her waist with both hands. The two of them were sitting face to face. She handed the bowl of soup to him. Drink it yourself. I want you to feed me. His hands were still hugging her waist, and his tone was extremely awkward. Siki sighed silently. Who asked him to be sick? Let him be. She scooped a spoonful of soup and brought it to his mouth. He opened his mouth gigai, and his burning gaze landed on her. She pretended not to know anything and lowered her eyes to feed him the soup mechanically. After feeding him the soup, she fed him half a bowl of millet porridge. Then she took a tissue and wiped his mouth. Rest for a while. She tried to pull the pillow from behind him, but he held her hand tightly and said in a low voice, Stay with me. She pursed her lips. Dad, Mom, and Nyonyo are all waiting for me at home. There are already many of them. I'm the only one here. His tone was so bleak. How can you be the only one here? Your mom and Bai Meiwei are both here. He curled his lips mockingly. With them here, I'd rather be alone. During this period of time, his mother had spared no effort in matchmaking him and Bai Meiwei. How could he not see that the reason why she had accepted Bai Meiwei was largely because of the son in her stomach? He was very disappointed. She had never seen the loneliness and sadness in his eyes before. Her heart felt very uncomfortable. She couldn't bear to leave him alone and go home for the reunion dinner. Go to sleep. She patted the back of his hand discreetly, implying that she would stay. He broke into a bright smile. Wifey, I knew you couldn't bear to leave me. She snorted in annoyance. Go to sleep or I'll leave. Okay. I'll sleep right away. Don't leave. He held her hand tightly and lay down on the bed obediently. He was indeed exhausted. Once he relaxed, he fell asleep as soon as he closed his eyes. Yisiki sat by the bed and looked at his sleeping face. She smiled bitterly. Her slender fingers gently stroked his brows as she whispered, Hubby, I missed you so much. When Lin Shihao woke up, it was already evening. Her hand was still in his. He turned his head and saw Yisiki glaring at him impatiently. You're finally awake. Let go of my hand. This man was afraid that she would run away. He was already fast asleep, but he still held her hand tightly. She couldn't go anywhere or do anything. She could only sit by his bed. Jiang Rulin brought her lunch in the afternoon. She could only use one hand to barely fill her stomach. That was fine, but the most troublesome thing was that she had to hold it in. He was slightly stunned, as if he couldn't believe that she was still here. Yisiki's frown deepened. Her voice was urgent. Why are you in a daze? Let go of my hand. I need to go to the bathroom. He actually laughed. The force on her wrist disappeared. Yisiki glared at him and ran into the bathroom at lightning speed. Although the bathroom door was closed, it didn't stop her from hearing his joyful laughter. Yisiki couldn't help but roll her eyes. Who caused her to be in such a sorry state? The culprit actually dared to laugh at her. How dare he? Lin Shihao had rested well and recovered some of his energy. He got out of bed, washed up, shaved, and changed into a new set of clothes. The gentle and handsome man of the past was back. After he was done, he smiled gently. Honey, let's go home. Yisiki's anger was stuck in her throat. You haven't recovered yet. Rest for another night before you leave the hospital. His smile became even gentler. I'm fine now. Today is the reunion night. Of course, I have to spend it with my family. He lifted 2 bags with one hand. They were filled with his clothes and daily necessities. He held her hand with the other hand. Honey, let's go home. She shook her head. I can't go home with you. I want to go back to my mother's place. Okay, then let's go to your mother's place. Shihao, she wanted to say something, but he stopped her with one sentence. Honey, I miss Nyonyo. Nyonyo missed him very much too. She had been looking forward to seeing him since the morning. She didn't want to disappoint her daughter. Yisiki and Lin Shihao appeared at the same time. The Yi family was stunned. Yisiki's eldest brother, Yi Shuyao, reacted quickly. He smiled and said, Speak of the devil. I was just about to call to ask when you guys would be back. Welfare Hongcha 866. Chapter 437. Lin Shihao greeted his family members with a smile. His brother and sister-in-law all smiled in response. Yi Weiliang gave him face and invited him to sit down with a smile. Nyonyo pounced on him and hugged his leg affectionately. Zhou Rongfang heard the noise and came out of the kitchen with an apron. She smiled and said, Shihao, you're here. Sit down and rest. Dinner will be ready soon. Siki, come and help me in the kitchen. Yi Siki sighed and quickly walked into the kitchen. As Zhou Rongfang busied herself, she lowered her voice and asked, How is he? He's fine now. That's good. Nyonyo and Yi Shuyao's son, Tong Tong, had a good relationship. The two children sat next to each other and would whisper and laugh from time to time. Even the atmosphere at the dinner table became lively. Everyone in the Yi family knew about Lin Shihao and Yi Siki's divorce, but no one mentioned it. They only talked about happy things. After dinner, everyone gathered to watch the New Year's gala. It was very lively. Lin Shihao's cell phone suddenly rang. He glanced at the caller ID and walked out to the balcony to answer the call. "Mom, have you eaten? You still know that I'm your mother." Jiang Rulin was very angry. "Since you've been discharged, why didn't you go home? Why did you go to someone else's house for the new year and leave me alone at home? What's going on?" Lin Shihao frowned. "Mom, what do you mean by someone else's house? I'm at my in-laws' house. We used to spend the new year with you. This is the first time I'm spending the new year with my in-laws. Why are you jealous?" "I'm not jealous. I'm angry. Since you're divorced, you should break up cleanly. Otherwise, if the Bai family finds out, who knows what trouble they'll cause." Lin Shihao frowned even more and said stiffly, "Mom, I've said many times that I won't agree to the divorce. Siki and I are still husband and wife. I don't care about the Bai family or the He family. I like to spend the new year at my wife's house. No one can stop me." Jiang Rulin was so angry that she couldn't speak for a long time. Why couldn't her son understand her painstaking efforts? "Mom, that's it. I'll go back tomorrow." He paused and added, "Mom, Happy New Year's Eve." He still felt guilty about leaving her alone at home. As soon as the call ended, another call came in. When Lin Shihao saw the 3 words, "by Mei Wei," he didn't even think about it and immediately turned off the phone. On this kind of family reunion day, he really didn't want to have anything to do with her. When he returned to the living room, Yi Siki was playing with her phone. It looked like she was texting someone. He really wanted to go over and see who she was talking to, but he couldn't make it too obvious. He quietly moved his butt closer to her, then stretched his neck and secretly peeked. "Xiao Tiancheng, silly girl, I wish you and little Nyonyo a happy spring festival. Yi Siki, happy Chinese New Year to you too." "Xiao Tiancheng, what are you doing?" "Yi Siki, watching TV. What about you?" "Xiao Tiancheng, you're being scolded by my old man. Poor thing." Yi Siki sent a sweaty emoji. Xiao Tiancheng replied with a grinning emoji. Lin Shihao watched the conversation between her and Xiao Tiancheng. His heart felt like it was soaked in a vat of vinegar. He stiffly retracted his head and sat upright. He pretended not to have seen anything and nudged Siki's arm. "Honey, Happy New Year." Yi Siki looked up at him in surprise. All these years, whenever they celebrated the New Year together, he would never say Happy New Year's to her. He coughed and insisted, "Honey, Happy New Year's." She replied strangely, "Happy New Year's." He smiled happily. Then he looked at the phone in her hand and lectured her like a parent. "Don't play with your phone. Everyone is watching TV. You have to respect everyone." Yi Siki's mouth twitched. She didn't know what was wrong with him. She said, "Oh." Then she lowered her head and quickly replied to Xiao Tianxing, "I can't chat anymore. Someone has something to say." Xiao Tianxing quickly replied, "Your husband?" When Yi Siki heard the text, she was too embarrassed to reply under Lin Shihao's intense gaze. She put the phone back into her pocket. At midnight, after watching the fireworks, Nyonyo complained that she was sleepy. Yi Siki took her back to her old room to rest. Lin Shihao chatted with his brother-in-law and father-in-law for a while, then he went back to his room to sleep. There weren't enough bedrooms at home, so Lin Shihao still shared a room with Yi Siki. When he returned to his room, Yi Siki had already fallen asleep with Nyonyo in her arms. Nyonyo slept between the two of them. Lin Shihao reached out and hugged the mother and daughter in his arms. His tense nerves completely relaxed, and he quickly fell asleep. When Yi Siki woke up the next day, she found herself in Lin Shihao's arms. She was shocked. She remembered that she deliberately let Nyonyo sleep in the middle last night to separate herself from Lin Shihao. Why was she in his arms when she woke up? Where was Nyonyo? She turned her head and looked around. Even though it was a small movement, it still woke Lin Shihao up. There was a faint smile in his obsidian-like eyes. He hugged her even tighter, and his voice was hoarse in the morning. "Honey, what are you looking for?" She pushed his chest and tried to retreat. "Where's Nyonyo? Why is she gone?" He lowered his head and rubbed his chin against her soft hair. He chuckled softly. "Nyonyo woke up a long time ago. She went out to play with Tong Tong. Honey, I haven't hugged you to sleep like this in a long time." They had only been apart for less than half a month, but he felt that it had been as long as a year. His hand quietly reached under her clothes and slowly moved up, caressing her smooth and tender skin inch by inch. His body was pressed tightly against hers, and the scorching heat from his body was like a soldering iron. She couldn't help but tremble slightly. Her cheeks were burning and she whispered, "Shihao, don't be like this. Let go of me, honey, I missed you." His voice was hoarse and magnetic. It was extremely sexy. His warm breath sprayed on her skin, and he gently bit her small earlobe. Her body suddenly tensed up, and she struggled with all her might. Her voice was frantic. "Lin Shihao, let go of me." They had been married for so many years. How could she not know that this was a sign that he was aroused? He didn't let go, but hugged her even tighter. His head slowly lowered, and he bit her shoulder gently. He supported her back with one hand and covered her soft snowy peaks with the other, kneading gently. His heavy breathing sounded in her ears. A hard and hot thing was pressed against her abdomen. She was embarrassed and angry, and she hit his chest, almost crying. "I told you to let go. You bastard, you only know how to bully me." They were about to get a divorce. How could he treat her like this? Her eyes were glistening. Lin Shihao's dark eyes suddenly narrowed, and he stopped what he was doing. He buried his head in her shoulder and breathed heavily. "Don't cry." He suppressed the desire in his heart with difficulty and kissed the corner of her moist eyes gently. "You bastard." She hit him on the shoulder and whimpered softly. "I'm a bastard." He admitted honestly. "I hate you." "Yeah, you hate me, you pervert." He laughed bitterly. "Wifey, do I have to admit this too?" Yi Siki couldn't help but want to laugh, but she immediately put on a straight face and said fiercely, "You have to admit it." "Okay, I'm a pervert." He stroked her hair good-naturedly and said gently, "Are you not angry anymore?" She glared at him. "Let go of me. I'm going to get up." Although he couldn't bear to, he still obediently let go of her. Yi Siki was afraid that he would suddenly change his mind, so she quickly got out of his arms and jumped off the bed. She said angrily, "I'm going to change. Close your eyes. Don't peek." "Okay, I'll close my eyes." His voice was full of laughter and indulgence, and it made her heart tremble. Yi Siki changed her clothes and turned around. She realized that a certain man really had his eyes closed. There was even a faint smile on his thin lips, and he looked extremely handsome. She said that she didn't love him anymore. It was all a lie. Just a look or a smile from him could make her depressed mood soar. Yet she had to endure it and not let him find out. Yi Siki felt that her life was very tiring. She forced herself to look away and walked straight to the door. When Lin Shihao opened his eyes, she had just opened the door and disappeared outside. He was like a child who had succeeded in his prank, and a bright smile appeared on his lips. Yi Siki felt that it was very strange. During dinner, everyone looked at her strangely. Her sister-in-law blushed and glanced at her several times, as if she wanted to say something but was too embarrassed to say it. Her mother's expression was also very strange. Her eyes kept moving around her neck. "Mommy, what's wrong with your neck? It's red. It looks like you were bitten by a mosquito." "But there aren't any mosquitoes now." Nyonyo blinked her large eyes and stared innocently at her neck. Yi Siki suddenly thought of something, and her mind went blank. "Neck? Red? It must have been left behind by Lin Shihao, that jerk." Her face was boiling hot. She lowered her head in embarrassment and shrunk her neck. Just as she was about to say something to save her face, Lin Shihao smiled and said, "Nyonyo, your mommy wasn't bitten by a mosquito. It's just an allergic reaction and a rash. But it's okay. It'll get better soon." "Oh, so that's what happened. Mommy, does it hurt?" Yi Siki smiled awkwardly. It doesn't hurt. It'll go away soon. Zhou Rongfang coughed and changed the topic. She mentioned that a certain child of Siki's 7 aunts was getting married after the new year. Yi Shuyao agreed and said that the child used to snatch toys from him when they were young. The awkward atmosphere livened up again. After dinner, Yi Siki went back to her room and looked in the mirror. She realized that there was a hickey on the right side of her neck. Because it was closer to the back, she didn't notice it when she was changing her clothes. She found a scarf and tied it around her neck to cover the hickey. Just as she was about to leave the room, Lin Shihao pushed the door open and came in. Seeing that she was wearing a scarf, his lips curled into a meaningful smile. Yi Siki's face was fierce. You did it on purpose. He laughed softly and admitted readily, I did it on purpose. He wanted to use this method to tell her family that he loved her very much and that they were still husband and wife. Welfare, Shinwu 799. Chapter 438. During the Spring Festival, Lin Shihao spent almost all of his time at the Yi residence. He claimed that he was there to accompany his daughter, but in reality he was trying to get his wife back. Yi Weiliang and Zhou Rongfang knew that they were about to get a divorce, but they were still pestering them. At first, they were a little unhappy, but when they saw how happy Lin Shihao and Yonyo were, they didn't say anything. As for Yi Siki, she could tolerate him wandering around in front of her during the day, but every night, he would squeeze into the same bed with her, which made her tremble with fear. She was afraid that she wouldn't be able to control herself and would be seduced by him, and something would go wrong. Fortunately, the holidays weren't long. After a week, Lin Shihao went back to work at the hospital, and Yi Siki moved back to the apartment he rented with Nyonyo. When Lin Shihao got off work at night and returned to his empty home, there was no one to smile at him and say, "Honey, you're back." No one to bring him a hot meal, and no one to laugh and talk about the interesting things of the day. He sat alone on the sofa and turned on the lights in the room. The volume of the TV was very loud, and he wanted to drive away the loneliness in his heart, but his heart was still empty. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. He was shocked. Thinking that Siki had returned, he quickly walked to the door and looked through the peephole. His brows furrowed tightly. Jiang Rulin and Bai Meiwei were standing at the door with 2 large suitcases by their feet. Lin Shihao opened the door. "Mom, it's so late. Why are you here?" "I wanted to come over during the day, but you weren't home during the day." Jiang Rulin pulled the 2 suitcases in front of him and said bluntly, "Shihao, help us bring the suitcases in." Then, without waiting for Lin Shihao's reaction, she pulled Bai Meiwei's hand and led her into the room. Lin Shihao didn't care about the suitcases. The door was open, and he strode past them to block their way. He looked unhappy. "Mom, what are you doing?" Jiang Rulin looked at him calmly. "You're a big man. How can you live without someone to take care of you? From today onwards, Meiwei and I will move in and take care of your daily needs." Lin Shihao frowned and the veins on his forehead throbbed. He suppressed his anger and said, "Mom, is it appropriate for you to let an outsider move into our house?" Bai Meiwei's face paled and she subconsciously tightened her grip on Jiang Rulin's hand. Jiang Rulin patted the back of her hand comfortingly and glared angrily at Lin Shihao. "How is Meiwei an outsider? She's now my future daughter-in-law and your son's mother. She can't work in the hospital in her current state, so I asked her to move in and take care of her." Lin Shihao's entire body suddenly exploded with cold anger. He suppressed his anger and shouted at her, "Mom, get this straight. Siki and I haven't divorced yet. Siki is your daughter-in-law. How can there be a mother-in-law like you? Don't go overboard." Jiang Rulin said angrily, "I'm going overboard? Who am I doing this for? It's all because of you." Lin Shihao clenched his fists and the veins on his forehead throbbed. "If you're really doing this for my sake, then don't interfere with my matters with Siki. You're my son. What's wrong with me interfering with your matters?" Jiang Rulin said angrily. "Meiwei and I are moving here anyway. If you don't help me carry my luggage, fine, it's fine. I'll carry it myself." Bai Meiwei's face paled and she forced a smile. "Auntie Jiang, Since Shihao doesn't welcome us, let's leave. Since you're already here, there's no reason for you to leave. You can stay here at ease. Jiang Ruolin held her hand and didn't even look at Lin Shihao's livid face. She rushed to the door and dragged the luggage in and slammed the door shut. They had already entered and one of them was his mother. There was no way to chase them away, but at the very least he had to keep his bottom line. Jiang Ruolin wanted to put Bai Meiwei's luggage in his and Siki's master bedroom, but he quickly locked the door and blocked it. With a cold face, he said, "Move her things to the guest room." Jiang Ruolin didn't insist. She led Bai Meiwei to the guest room while she stayed in another guest room. It was a night that made people irritable. Lin Shihao changed into his home clothes. His brows were tightly knitted as he leaned against the headboard and read a book. He couldn't take in a single word of the book. His ears were filled with the laughter and chatter of the two women outside. One was his mother, and the other was the woman who caused his family to break apart. They sat in the living room and chatted while watching a melodramatic TV series about wealthy families. He couldn't calm down at all. He simply threw the book on the bedside table and closed his eyes to rest. However, he couldn't sleep and his mind was in a mess. He picked up his phone and sent a message to Siki. After editing a few messages, he felt unsatisfied and deleted them. Finally, he sent a few simple words. "Honey, is Nyonyo asleep?" When Siki saw this message, she didn't intend to reply. However, he didn't ask her how she was but asked about their daughter instead. It seemed like there was no reason not to reply to him. She hesitated for a moment before replying. "She's already asleep." Lin Shihao held his phone and waited for her reply. After waiting for a few minutes, he still didn't get a reply. He was very depressed. Suddenly, his phone beeped and he quickly opened the message. Even though it was a simple message, he was so happy that the corners of his mouth curled up. He quickly sent another message. "Did Nyonyo miss me today?" Siki was a little annoyed. This man must be doing this on purpose. She replied slowly, "How would I know? I'm going to sleep. I'm ignoring you." When Lin Shihao saw this message, his deep eyes were full of smiles. He could imagine her glaring at him coquettishly. Her tone was clearly angry, but in his eyes, it became coquettish words. He chuckled softly and replied, "Go to sleep. Cover yourself with the blanket. It's best if you can dream of me." As expected, she didn't reply to him. Although he felt a little disappointed, his heart was still overflowing with warmth. She wasn't like what she said. She didn't love him anymore. She still cared about him. He was going to pursue her relentlessly. The next morning, Lin Shihao washed up and changed his clothes. When he came out of the bedroom, he saw a figure busy in the kitchen. He vaguely thought that Siki had returned. His heart tightened and he almost rushed over. The figure suddenly turned around and smiled gently at him. "Shihao, good morning. Take a seat first. Breakfast will be ready soon." So it was Bai Meiwei. Lin Shihao's boiling heart gradually turned cold. He said lightly, "I'm not eating." He turned around and locked the bedroom door with the key. His intention was obvious. He didn't want anyone to enter the room. The smile on Bai Meiwei's face froze. He didn't look at her and walked towards the door with his bag in hand. She hurried over and grabbed his arm. He turned around unhappily, his sharp gaze fixed on her hand. She calmly retracted her hand and smiled faintly. "Shihao, it's not good for your health to skip breakfast. I've already made breakfast. Eat a little before you leave." He said coldly, "No need. I'm not used to other people's cooking." With a bang, the door slammed shut, and his figure disappeared. Bai Meiwei stood there in a daze. After a long time, she smiled darkly. That smile made people shudder. Lin Shihao took the afternoon off. When he opened the door with the key, there was no one in the house. Bai Meiwei and his mother had gone out. It was good that they weren't at home. It would prevent another dispute. He found a suitcase from the closet and stuffed his clothes and daily necessities into it. Then he locked the door and went downstairs with the suitcase. He put the suitcase in the trunk of the car and drove to Siki's neighborhood. Xiao Tianxing held Nyonyo's little hand while Siki carried Nyonyo's school bag. The three of them came out of the elevator together. Their laughter echoed in the corridor like a happy family of three. Yi Siki took out the key and opened the door. She smiled and said, "Thank you for sending us back. Do you want to come in and sit for a while?" Xiao Tianxing glanced at Nyonyo, who was happily running into her room. He raised his eyebrows and said, "If you don't mind, I'd like to stay for dinner." Yi Siki looked a little embarrassed. That's not very good. They were a man and a woman alone. No matter what, they should avoid arousing suspicion. Xiao Tianxing looked aggrieved. "Why are you so petty? Isn't it just a meal from you? At most, I'll treat you to a meal another day. My servants are on holiday today. No one will cook for me when I get home." He sounded so pitiful that Yi Siki couldn't help but sympathize with him. She hesitated for a moment and said, "All right then. But I can't promise that it'll be a sumptuous meal. We'll eat whatever is in the fridge." "No problem. I'm not picky at all." He grinned and almost patted his chest to make a promise. Yi Siki changed her clothes, put on an apron, and went into the kitchen to cook. Xiaolanxing leaned against the kitchen door and watched for a while before she chased him away. "I'm nervous with you standing here. Go to the living room and watch TV." Xiao Tianxing laughed. He didn't sit in the living room and watch TV. Instead, he ran to Nyonyo's room and helped her with her homework. Yi Siki was busy in the kitchen when the doorbell suddenly rang. She couldn't free her hands to open the door, so she stuck her head out and shouted, "Nyonyo, help mommy open the door and see who's here." She didn't expect Xiao Tianxing to come running out. He walked straight to the door and opened it without looking at who it was. The person outside and the person inside were stunned at the same time. Lin Shihao was wearing a coat and holding a box of cake in his hand. His tall and straight figure stood at the door. His handsome face was expressionless, and his eyes were cold. He said calmly, "Mr. Xiao, why are you here?" Xiao Tianxing crossed his arms leisurely and chuckled. "I should be the one asking you that. Mr. Lin, why are you here?" The two men were equally outstanding. One stood at the door while the other stood outside. One stood proudly while the other was wild and unruly. Neither side gave in to the other and fought with their eyes. "Who is it?" Yi Siki put the food on a plate, turned off the gas, wiped her hands, and came out of the kitchen. The two men's eyes fell on her at the same time. When she saw the situation clearly, she felt like she was struck by lightning. Welfare Hongcha 866. Chapter 439. Who could tell her what was going on? Why did she have a bad premonition that she had been caught red-handed when she looked at Lin Shihao's cold eyes? Yi Siki coughed and forced a smile. Shihao, why are you here?" Lin Shihao couldn't wait to throw Xiao Tianxing out and hug the little woman who was looking at him timidly in his arms. He clenched his fists tightly, gritted his teeth, and said in a deep voice, "I'm not only here as a husband, but also as a neighbor. May I ask why Mr. Xiao is here?" Xiao Tianxing smiled innocently. "I'm here as a friend, of course. I'm here to have dinner with Siki and Nyonyo. Can't I do that?" Yi Siki quickly explained, "Tianxing sent Nyonyo and me home today. I'm treating him to dinner to show my gratitude." Xiao Tianxing looked a little unhappy. Was this woman so worried that Lin Shihao would misunderstand? "I haven't had dinner either." His meaning was obvious. He was going to freeload this meal. His face was dark. Without waiting for the host to greet him, he changed his shoes and walked in as if he had returned to his own home. Yi Siki couldn't say anything in front of outsiders. She forced a smile and said, "The food is ready. Let's eat." Lin Shihao replied with an N and placed the cake on the coffee table. Then he went to Nyonyo's room to call her to eat. When Nyonyo saw that her father had come, she was extremely excited. She hugged his neck and kissed his face twice. The atmosphere at the dinner table was a little strange. As usual, Lin Shihao was a good husband and father. He picked up food for Siki and deboned fish for his daughter. He clearly drew a line on the table. On one side was the family of three, and on the other was Xiao Tianxing. Xiao Tianxing looked at them happily and couldn't help but feel a little bitter. Yi Siki was very considerate of his feelings. She smiled and told him to eat more, as it was good for his health. "Mr. Xiao, don't stand on ceremony. More." Lin Shihao acted like a male host. Xiao Tianxing smiled. Mr. Lin, you don't have to be so polite. He casually reminded him that he was just a guest. Seeing that the two of them were about to start arguing again, Yi Siki quickly changed the topic. By the way, Shihao, you said that you're my neighbor. What do you mean? Lin Shihao scooped half a bowl of soup for his daughter and smiled gently. From today onwards, I've moved upstairs. From now on, we'll be neighbors. Yi Siki was stunned. Why don't you stay at home? Wouldn't it be troublesome to move out? Lin Shihao looked at her and smiled meaningfully. I'll follow you wherever you go. Yi Siki's fingers trembled. She wanted to say something, but because Xiao Tianxing was present, she swallowed her words. Nyo Nyo clapped happily. That's great. Daddy lives upstairs. He can eat with us every day from now on. Yeah, Daddy will take you to and from school from now on. You don't have to trouble your Uncle Xiao. Lin Shihao emphasized the word uncle as if he was reminding someone. Xiao Tianxing's smile did not change, but his words were especially sharp. Some things can't be changed just because you're close. Oh, what's that idiom again? Oh, right, so close yet worlds apart. That's what it means. Lin Shihao smiled faintly. I also know that there's a saying, the pavilion closest to the water enjoys the moonlight first. Since you have the heart, there's nothing you can't do. I think there's another saying, bedfellows dream different dreams. Xiao Tianxing's lips curved into a cold smile. Lin Shihao smiled and said faintly, Mr. Xiao is so knowledgeable. You must have heard of the saying, love is stronger than gold. The two of them opposed each other with equal harshness. Nyo Nyo looked from one to the other. She puffed up her cheeks as if she understood. Yi Siki slammed her chopsticks on the table. If you want to continue playing word games, I won't keep you company. Xiao Tianxing coughed and said, word games are boring. We won't play anymore. Yi Siki snorted and picked up her chopsticks again. I see that you're having fun. How is it boring? Lin Shihao picked up a piece of pork rib and placed it in her bowl. He chuckled softly. Don't be angry. When they finally finished eating, Yi Siki cleared the dishes and went into the kitchen as if she was escaping. Lin Shihao wanted to go in and help her, but she chased him out. Xiao Tianxing played with Nyo Nyo for a while. When Yi Siki finished cleaning up the kitchen, he said goodbye and left. Yi Siki walked him to the door. He glanced at Lin Shihao, who came out with her. The two of them stood side by side and looked very compatible. He felt a little upset. He smiled and said, I'm leaving. Good night. Be careful on your way back. Good night. Yi Siki smiled and waved. It was already past 9, but Lin Shihao had no intention of leaving. He hugged Nyo Nyo and curled up on the sofa to play games. Yi Siki couldn't help but say, it's getting late. Shouldn't you go home? Lin Shihao lifted his wrist to look at his watch. He smiled and said, I almost forgot the time. Nyo Nyo, it's time to sleep. Come, Daddy will carry you back to your room. No need. I'm already a big girl. I'll go back by myself. Daddy, Mommy, good night. Nyo Nyo jumped out of his arms and waved her chubby little hand. She ran back to her room like a little cannonball, as if she was deliberately leaving them some alone space. In the large space, only the two of them were left. His handsome figure stood in front of her and walked closer to her step by step. She could smell danger in the air and instinctively stepped back. Suddenly, he reached out and wrapped his arms around her waist. His dark eyes stared into her eyes. His thin lips moved slightly. Does he come here often? Who? She played dumb. He looked slightly annoyed. You know who I'm talking about. Her expression was calm. Not very often. He's only come here twice. The first time was when we first moved here. Today is the second time. His face darkened and his eyes narrowed dangerously. You think 2 times is too little? Yi Siki pushed his arm away angrily. What are you doing? I only treat him as a normal friend. I see that you're very free. Let's find some time tomorrow to settle the divorce procedures. Lin Shihao's eyes narrowed and a surge of anger rushed to his heart. Just as he was about to say something, his cell phone suddenly rang. He glanced at the caller ID and frowned. As soon as the call connected, Jiang Rulin's unhappy voice was heard. Shihao, it's so late. Why aren't you home yet? Mom, I've moved out. Jiang Rulin said angrily, Are you crazy? You're living well in your own home. Why do you have to move out? Lin Shihao frowned and said coldly, I am crazy. I've been crazy since the day you forced me to divorce Siki. My own home? Humph, you're moving in with an outsider. Is that still my own home? Mom, as long as Siki doesn't go back, I won't move back either. You can stay as long as you want. I won't care about you anymore. Being forced to this extent, he felt a headache coming on. The anger and resentment in his heart finally broke through the barrier of reason and exploded. On the other end, Jiang Rulin was so angry at her son that she was trembling all over. Bai Meiwei consoled her gently, but there was a hidden coldness in her beautiful eyes. No one knew what she was thinking. On the other end, Yi Siki heard Lin Shihao and Jiang Rulin talking on the phone and more or less guessed something. She hesitated for a moment and said, Your mom and Bai Meiwei moved to your home? She quickly changed her words. His heart tightened and he glared at her. That's our home. He didn't refute, which was a tacit admission. She suddenly found it very funny. That Bai Meiwei really couldn't wait. They hadn't officially divorced yet, but she was already shameless enough to enter their home. She said mildly, I'm tired. You should go back and rest too. She turned to leave, but Lin Shihao grabbed her wrist. Are you angry? She frowned. Why would I be angry? You're angry that Bai Meiwei moved into our home. He stared into her eyes and said with certainty, I'm not. That's your home now. You can let whoever you want move in. It's none of my business. She flung his hand away. He stared fixedly at her back view as she left resolutely. A smile appeared in his dark eyes and the corners of his lips turned up. He said slowly, Wifey, so you still know how to be angry. Since she was angry, it meant that she still cared. He was in a good mood after coming to this conclusion. Oh, it looked like he would be able to sleep well tonight. After Lin Shihao moved upstairs, it directly led to two consequences. The first consequence was that Yi Siki had to make an extra set of meals every day because a certain thick-skinned man would come over to freeload every day. At first, she didn't want to make his share, not because she was stingy, but because she didn't want him to develop a habit. Who knew that he would actually be so thick-skinned as to eat her breakfast, causing her to have no choice but to make another set? The second consequence was that Yi Siki's bedtime was delayed by half an hour because a certain shameless man would stay at her house to play games with Nyonyo every day after freeloading on her for dinner. He would only leave reluctantly when she couldn't hold back her temper and chased him away. After being together for so many years, it was only now that she realized that a certain man with the surname Lin had called her by the wrong name. He should be called Nyo Pai Tang, a sticky and sweet Nyo Pai Tang. More than 10 days passed like this. Yi Siki proposed a divorce again. Lin Shihao was already so good at it that he didn't get angry with her anymore. He directly blocked her mouth with a kiss. She was so angry that she waved her hands and punched him with all her might. He groaned. After he let go of her, he smiled like a kitten that had succeeded in cheating. Wifey, if you mention those two words again in the future, I will use this method to block your mouth again. You bastard! Yi Siki was so angry that she almost vomited blood. Lin Shihao wasn't in a hurry to get a divorce, but someone else was. The Bai family couldn't hold back anymore and made 2 calls to Yi Siki. Yi Siki was angered by both sides and wanted to tie Lin Shihao up with a rope and take him to the Civil Affairs Bureau. Who knew that at this moment when things were calm on the surface but undercurrents were surging, Lin Shihao's scandal was exposed. An anonymous netizen posted a post that described in detail the emotional entanglement between Lin Shihao and Bai Meiwei. It also exposed photos of Lin Shihao and Bai Meiwei wearing white coats and chatting face to face. There were also photos of Lin Shihao being hospitalized and Bai Meiwei taking care of him. Of course, as an extramarital affair scandal, there was no lack of the abandoned wife. At the same time, photos of Yi Siki covering her face and crying bitterly were released online. If this was just an extramarital affair between 2 ordinary doctors, it wouldn't have attracted so much attention. The bad thing was that the netizen used the identity of the man and woman to talk about it. Lin Shihao was the only son of Jiang Ruolin, the female boss of the Wang Jianglu chain of restaurants. He could be considered a rich second-generation heir. On the other hand, Bai Meiwei was the daughter of the director of the city's People's Hospital. She was the daughter of a famous family. Bai Meiwei suddenly received a call from Bailey Fei Yen. "Meiwei, are you okay?" Bai Meiwei heard her worried voice and was puzzled. "I'm not bad. What's wrong?" Bailey Fei Yen had a loud personality and couldn't hide things at all. She opened her mouth and said, "Aya, it's all over the internet. It said that you and Lin Shihao had an extramarital affair and forced his wife away. Now you're pregnant and even moved into his house." Bai Meiwei's head exploded and her face turned pale. It was all over the internet? How could this be? Who was trying to harm her? Could it be Yisiki? Meiwei? Are you okay? Bai Meiwei gritted her teeth. "I'm fine. Fei Yen, I'm hanging up first." Without waiting for Bailey Fei Yen to say anything else, she hung up the phone. Her beautiful eyes were filled with anger and she used all her strength to swing the vase on the coffee table to the ground. The porcelain vase smashed to the ground and shattered into pieces. "Aya, Meiwei, what's wrong? Are you hurt?" Jiang Ruolin heard the noise and hurriedly ran to the living room. Bai Meiwei sat weakly on the sofa. Tears welled up in her eyes and she was about to cry. "Auntie Jiang, I accidentally dropped the vase." "It's fine if it's dropped. It's just a vase. Why are you crying?" Jiang Ruolin sat beside her and comforted her gently. "Don't cry. It's not good for a pregnant woman to cry too much." Bai Meiwei turned her head and threw herself into her arms. She burst into tears. "Auntie, something bad has happened. What's wrong?" She raised her head, her face full of tears. "I don't know who exposed my relationship with Shihao on the internet. Now everyone is saying that I'm a homewrecker. Auntie, what should we do? Shihao will definitely be affected." Jiang Ruolin was stunned at first, then she became anxious. However, she didn't forget that Bai Meiwei was pregnant. She tried her best to suppress the anxiety in her heart and comforted her. "Meiwei, don't cry. It's not good for the child to be emotional. Let's think about how to solve this problem first." Bai Meiwei wiped her tears aggrievedly. "I don't know who did this to Shihao. She didn't mention herself at all. Every sentence she said was for Lin Shihao's sake." Jiang Ruolin couldn't help but follow her train of thought. She frowned and said, "That person knows so much. It must be someone you and Shihao know." Bai Meiwei nodded. "I guess so too. And that person must have a grudge with us. Otherwise, they wouldn't have done this to us." A grudge? Someone who knew the inside story very well? There was only one person who fit both of these criteria. A name immediately popped up in Jiang Ruolin's mind. Yisiki. Come and see. Song Shu 566. Chapter 440. Yisiki was very puzzled. At work today, her colleagues were all looking at her strangely, as if they were looking at someone begging on the streets. They were looking at her with a gaze that was half sympathetic and half pitiful. The vegetable washer, Xiao Wang, smiled at her. "Sister Yi, if the old doesn't go, the new won't come. Don't be sad over those who aren't worth it." The head chef patted her shoulder. "Xiao Yi, you're a good woman. You'll definitely meet a good man who will cherish you." The female chef, Xiao Nan, who was closest to her, hugged her arm and whispered, "Sister Siki, don't be sad. That man can't see the good in you. It's his loss to leave you. You'll definitely meet a better man." Yisiki was confused. She looked at them in confusion. "What are you all talking about?" She had never told anyone about her family situation. Why did they all look like they knew so much about it? Xiao Wang held the iPad in front of her and quickly opened a webpage. "Sister Yuk, your situation is all over the internet." Yisiki was shocked. She quickly snatched the iPad from his hands and carefully browsed through the post about her and Lin Shihao's marriage. The post described Lin Shihao in a very bad light. It said that Lin Shihao had cheated on his marriage in order to climb up the social ladder and had hooked up with the director's daughter. It also said that Lin Shihao was heartless and abandoned his wife. It even said that Lin Shihao took advantage of work to maintain an improper relationship with a female patient. What kind of nonsense was this? Yisiki was angry and anxious. Her face was very ugly, and her fingers were trembling. Her colleagues thought that the post had poked at her sore spot and made her sad. They all came forward to comfort her. She took a deep breath, glanced at everyone and said calmly, "You're all wrong. My husband isn't that kind of person. This post is made up. Someone is deliberately slandering him." After saying this, she didn't care about the expressions of the crowd. She hurriedly turned around and planned to go to the people's hospital. Since her colleagues knew about this matter, the hospital must know about it too. She had to go there and explain it clearly for Lin Shihao. Just as she came out of the kitchen and was walking along the staff corridor, her cell phone suddenly rang. It was Jiang Rulin. She put the phone to her ear and Jiang Rulin's angry voice immediately exploded. "Yisiki, were you the one who exposed Shihao and Meiwei's matter on the internet? A day as husband and wife means endless devotion for the rest of your life. How can you be so cruel?" In a moment of panic, Yisiki blurted out, "Mom, you've misunderstood. I didn't do it. I just found out about it. Don't call me Mom. I don't have such a heartless daughter-in-law like you." Jiang Rulin had already determined that she was the mastermind, so she said angrily, "I was the one who forced you to divorce Shihao. If you have any resentment, then take it out on me. Don't hurt Shihao." Yisiki's face turned pale. She said anxiously, "It really wasn't me. We've been together for so many years. Don't you understand my character? How could I do something to hurt Shihao?" Jiang Rulin snorted. "Who else knows the inside story so well besides you? Moreover, once Meiwei's matter is exposed, the only person who will benefit from it is you. I want you to clarify this matter quickly and stop hurting Shihao and Meiwei." Yisiki knew that Jiang Rulin was a stubborn person. As long as she had decided on something, no one could change her mind. She gritted her teeth and said in a low voice, "Madam Jiang, I'll say it one last time. I really didn't do it. Instead of biting me and not letting go, why don't you hurry up and find the real mastermind?" "You? Hello? I'm so angry. How dare you hang up on me?" Jiang Rulin was so angry that her whole body was trembling. Bai Meiwei appeared by her side at the right time and comforted her. "Auntie Jiang, maybe we've really wronged Sister Siki." Jiang Rulin said angrily, "Other than her, I can't think of anyone else." On the other side, Yisiki felt extremely wronged. She bit her lip hard and quickly walked out of the hotel. Suddenly, a hand grabbed her wrist from behind. She didn't look back. She lowered her head and suppressed her anger in her voice. "Let go." No matter who it was, she only wanted to give them these two words. Xiao Tianxing's voice came from behind her. "Why are you in such a hurry to leave? Where do you want to go?" Yisiki's body stiffened. She didn't expect him to appear. "I have something to do. I'm going out." Her vision blurred and Xiao Tianxing appeared in front of her. There was a faint smile on his handsome face. "What are you going out for?" Yisiki pursed her lips. "Something bad happened and I need to deal with it. I'm taking a leave of absence today. Please approve it, President." Xiao Tianxing's smile froze. His dark eyes stared straight at her. "Is it because of that post that you're worried that your husband will be misunderstood, so you're rushing to the hospital to clarify things for him?" Yisiki was slightly stunned. Then she understood. Now that this matter had caused a stir, it wasn't strange for him to know about it. She answered honestly, "Yes, I need to go to the hospital." "Are you an idiot?" Xiao Tianxing's expression suddenly became fierce. He raised his hand and knocked her head. He said fiercely, "Lin Shihao's mother has already determined that you're the mastermind. If you rush to the hospital to clarify things now, you might be used by someone with ulterior motives and cause more misunderstandings. They might think that this is a case of revenge by an abandoned wife." Yisiki looked at him seriously. "Even if people misunderstand, I don't care. I can't just watch him get into trouble." Xiao Tianxing's eyes narrowed. He clenched his fists tightly. After a while, The corners of his lips turned up. He sneered. Looks like you really love him. Even if he hurt you so deeply, you still can't forget him. Actually, I've never forgotten him. These words were on the tip of Yi Siki's tongue, but she swallowed them in the end. She said, Tunxing, thank you for reminding me. However, I still have to go and find him. She didn't know what situation Lin Shihao was in right now. She was very nervous and uneasy. She could only feel at ease after confirming that he was fine. Lin Shihao's reputation had plummeted. In the past, patients would line up a few days in advance just to see him. Now, his office was deserted. He had been labeled as someone who took advantage of female patients. How could anyone still be willing to see him? No matter where he went, he would receive strange looks from everyone. There were also people who pointed at him, whispered, and questioned his character. The matter was getting out of hand. Bai Jiao couldn't protect Lin Shihao anymore. As the director, he had to answer to the hospital's board of directors. The chairman, Cheng Wentao, was in his 60s. He used to be the secretary of the county party committee. He was an upright person who handled matters strictly. He had always paid attention to improving the hospital's work style. Therefore, after Lin Shihao's matter was exposed, he took it very seriously and planned to use this opportunity to rectify the hospital's work style. When Yi Siki rushed to the hospital, the board of directors was in the middle of a meeting to discuss Lin Shihao's matter. As the parties involved, Lin Shihao and Bai Meiwei were also called to the meeting. The board of directors was made up of 9 directors, and Bai Jiao was one of them. Including Lin Shihao and Bai Meiwei, there were a total of 11 people present. Cheng Wentao sat at the head of the table with a serious expression. His sharp gaze fell on Lin Shihao as he said in a deep voice, Dr. Lin, someone exposed online that you had an extramarital affair with Dr. Bai and sexually harassed female patients. What's your explanation for this? Lin Shihao was expressionless as he said slowly, What happened between Dr. Bai and me is a private matter. There's no need to explain it to the board of directors. As for the accusation of sexual harassment, it's purely slander. I've never done anything that goes against professional ethics. Cheng Wentao's face sank. The matter between you and Dr. Bai has gone beyond the scope of a private matter. Due to your special status, this kind of scandal has caused a huge negative impact on our hospital's reputation. Today, in front of the board of directors, you must give a reasonable explanation. Lin Shihao's gaze was cold as he said indifferently, There's nothing to explain. The matter between Dr. Bai and me is my fault. I'm willing to bear the legal responsibility. As for sexual harassment, it's purely slander. I'm very sorry for damaging the hospital's reputation. I'm willing to take the blame and resign. No, you can't resign. The door to the conference room suddenly opened and a hurried voice sounded. Everyone looked up and saw a short-haired woman standing at the door. She was dressed in professional attire and her face was flushed from exercising. Her mouth was slightly open and she was panting heavily. She looked like she had run over in a hurry. Lin Shihao's eyes narrowed. Siki, what was she doing here? Seeing Yi Siki close the door and walk into the conference room, a flash of hatred quickly flashed across Bai Meiwei's eyes. Cheng Wentao frowned and said in a displeased tone, Who are you? Yi Siki walked to the front of the conference table and bowed politely. Everyone, I'm very sorry to interrupt your meeting. My name is Yi Siki. I'm Lin Shihao's ex-wife. Lin Shihao's body stiffened when he heard the word ex-wife. His cold gaze immediately locked onto Yi Siki. What was she trying to do? Cheng Wentao's expression softened. Madam Yi, what brings you here? Yi Siki glanced at the cards on the table in front of him and smiled. Hello, Chairman. I'm here to clarify some matters and clear Lin Shihao's name. Please give me a chance. Cheng Wentao nodded. Go ahead. Yi Siki glanced at Lin Shihao and then looked around. She smiled and said, Lin Shihao and I divorced a year ago. He and Dr. Bai only started dating after our divorce, so there's no such thing as an affair. Lin Shihao suddenly clenched his fists. His deep eyes were like a dangerous whirlpool that seemed to suck her whole body in. The deputy director of the obstetrics and gynecology department, Li Donghao, was also a director. His expression was calm and there was a probing look in his eyes. He said slowly, "Madam Yi, did you really divorce a year ago? Why do I always see you delivering lunch to Dr. Lin? Also, it seems like you've always been living together, right?" Hongcha 866. Chapter 441. Yi Siki smiled awkwardly. "It's embarrassing to talk about this. I've always been a housewife with no source of income. After the divorce, I couldn't support myself and my daughter. Moreover, we didn't want our daughter to get hurt, so we kept the divorce a secret from her. So, I temporarily stayed at my ex-husband's house. After I found a job and had a source of income, I moved out of his house." A shrewd-looking middle-aged man said, "It sounds reasonable, but you don't mind showing us the divorce certificate, right?" Yi Siki's expression froze. Just as she was about to say something to get away with it, she heard a loud bang. Lin Shihao slammed the table and stood up abruptly. His face was ashen as he glared at her fiercely. "Enough, stop lying." Everyone was stunned. Yi Siki's heart tightened. She glared at him angrily. "Lin Shihao, shut up. I'm telling the truth." "The truth?" Lin Shihao sneered. He slowly looked around and saw all the directors looking at him. He said coldly, "The truth is that I cheated on you. Yi Siki and I haven't divorced yet, and we won't get a divorce in the future. There's no need for this meeting to continue. I'll take full responsibility and resign from all my positions. I won't bring shame to the hospital. Sorry, I'll take my leave first." With that, he grabbed Yi Siki's wrist and dragged her towards the door. "Let go of me." Siki was extremely anxious. As she was forced to walk out, she turned her head and shouted, "Chairman, don't listen to him. He's just saying things out of anger." Lin Shihao suddenly reached out and covered her mouth. He quickly dragged her out of the meeting room. With a bang, the door to the meeting room closed. Everyone stared at the door in a daze. Chang Wentao reacted quickly. He coughed and said, "Dr. Lin doesn't admit to the accusation of sexual harassment. It's very likely that someone is deliberately defaming him. I think we should investigate this person seriously and find out the truth." Someone asked, "Then what about Dr. Lin and Dr. Bai?" Li Donghao said, "Since Dr. Lin has admitted his mistake and is willing to take responsibility, I think we should respect his wishes." Bai Jiao frowned. He wanted to say a few words for Lin Shihao, but when he thought that his daughter was also involved in this matter, he couldn't say anything, so he dismissed the idea. The vice president said, "Dr. Lin is the backbone of our hospital. If she is fired because of this, it seems a little too much. I agree with the chairman's opinion. Let's find out the truth first before we punish Dr. Lin." In the conference room, everyone was discussing how to deal with this matter. Lin Shihao had already dragged Yi Siki into his office. Lin Shihao's handsome face was covered with a layer of frost, and his sharp eyes stared at her. "Why did you lie? Do you really want a divorce that badly?" Yi Siki was almost angered to death by him. Her red lips trembled as she said angrily, "Why are you stopping me? He was clearly about to succeed. I just don't want you to be fired. Is that wrong?" He held her shoulders forcefully and shouted at her, "You stupid woman, when will you understand that power, money, and reputation are not important? The only thing that matters is you. I just don't want to lose you." She rarely saw him roar so loudly without caring about his image. The veins on his forehead were throbbing, indicating that he was extremely furious. However, she did not feel afraid. The anger in her heart had miraculously disappeared, leaving only warmth in her heart. She stared into his eyes and asked seriously, "Shihao, do you know what you're doing?" "Of course I know. Those empty things can't be compared to you at all." His expression was solemn, as if he was making an oath. He said slowly, "Siki, if I'm sentenced, will you wait for me?" She felt a lump in her throat and answered solemnly, "I will." He pulled her into his arms and hugged her tightly. "Your words are enough. Honey, don't try to push me away anymore. Let's face it together." She was silent for a moment. He was extremely emotional and hugged her even tighter. "Let's go home tonight?" Forget it, let's go home tomorrow. He suddenly remembered that Bai Meiwei and his mother were still living in his house. She said softly, Shihao, although I'm willing to wait for you and face it with you, I don't want to go home for the time being. That house was no longer their home. There was another woman living there, and that woman was pregnant with his child. She really didn't want to face that. His body stiffened. After a moment of silence, he said, Okay, we won't go home. As long as she didn't insist on a divorce, it was fine. After a while, Yisiki said, Shihao, I suspect that someone is deliberately trying to harm you behind your back. Did you offend someone? Lin Shihao's deep eyes moved slightly. I've seen those photos. They were basically taken in the hospital. I suspect that the person who posted the post is hiding in our hospital. I plan to get someone to help check his IP address. Yisiki's mind worked quickly. She suddenly thought of something and smiled. I know a computer expert. Leave this to me. He looked at her suspiciously. Who is it? She beamed. Xiaobao. Although he's young, I heard from Xia that he's a computer expert. Although he was a little skeptical of Xiaobao's ability, he didn't want to dampen his wife's enthusiasm. He smiled. Okay, I'll leave this to my wife. Lin Shihao's incident caused an uproar and even appeared in the newspapers. Xia Dong had always paid attention to current affairs, so naturally, she didn't miss this piece of news. When she was having breakfast with Bailey Han, she was a little absent-minded. She wondered if she should call Siki and ask about the situation. Bailey Han saw that his wife was in a daze. She was poking at the ham with a fork. The corners of his lips curled up. He brought her plate in front of him. As he helped her cut the ham, he asked, Honey, what are you thinking about? The ham is about to be poked into a sieve by you. Xia Dong suddenly came back to her senses. She looked down at the plate. Where's the plate? Bailey Han couldn't help but laugh. His wife looked so cute when she was in a daze. Xia Dong saw that he had placed the plate with the ham in front of her again. She blushed and snorted awkwardly. Who told you to steal my plate? Okay, it's my fault. I'll definitely report it to you in the future. Bailey Han laughed happily. Xia Dong raised her eyebrows and smiled. She drank a mouthful of milk and said, Hubby, did you read today's newspaper? Bailey Han grunted. Are you going to talk about Lin Shihao? He had already guessed that her absent-mindedness during breakfast had something to do with Lin Shihao's report. Xia Dong nodded and said gloomily, Yeah, Lin Shihao definitely wouldn't sexually harass a female patient. Also, his relationship with Bai Meiwei isn't as bad as the article said. I think someone is deliberately framing him. You want to help him? He pulled out a tissue and wiped the milk foam from the corner of her lips. Yeah. Although he hurt Siki and made me angry, he's still my friend. I can't just stand by and watch him get framed. Let's help him and also help Siki. Te hubby? She grinned and smiled sweetly. She looked so obsequious. Bailey Han couldn't help but laugh. He stared at her with a burning gaze. Okay, I can help him. But how are you going to thank me? Xia Dong thought of something and blushed. She whispered in his ear, At most, I'll agree to wear that. His lips curled into a devilish smile. She was annoyed and embarrassed. She pinched his waist. You know what I'm talking about. Are you pretending not to understand? He chuckled softly and quickly kissed her cheek. He lowered his voice and said, Oh deal. Wifey, I'm looking forward to your sexy lingerie. He deliberately said those words word by word in her ear. His warm breath blew on her skin. She couldn't help but tremble slightly. She actually felt a little thirsty. She quickly pushed him away. Her cheeks were burning as she whispered, Be careful of your image. Although there were only the two of them in the dining room, their family could appear at any time. That afternoon, Yisiki called. Just as she was about to ask Xiaobao for help, Xia Dong interrupted her. Yezi, I don't need you to tell me. I've already asked Ahan to help me track down the person who posted the article. Yisiki was very grateful. Then I'm really grateful to your husband. When this matter is settled, I'll treat you to a meal. Xia Dong teased, You don't have to thank my husband. Just thank me because I've already promised to give him a thank you gift. He's so petty now. As long as I ask him for help, he'll definitely ask me for something in return. Yi Siki couldn't help but laugh. No way. Let me guess. Don't tell me he wants you to repay him with your body. Xia Dong was a little embarrassed. She deliberately laughed mischievously. Since you know so much, it seems like your old Lin has also blackmailed you before. I was just guessing. It was really just a guess. Hey, I can already tell that someone is feeling guilty. Hurry up and admit it. Yi Siki's cheeks were burning hot. She lowered her voice and said, "Stop fooling around. He's here." Lin Shihao was sitting right beside her. He could hear their conversation. Xia Dong was stunned at first. Then she burst into laughter. She deliberately raised her voice and said, "Ask old Lin to sit further away. We good sisters still have some private things to talk about." Lin Shihao obviously heard what Xia Dong said over the phone. His handsome face looked a little awkward. He stood up and said, "Honey, I'll go buy some drinks." He didn't deliberately lower his voice. Xia Dong naturally heard it too. She sighed over the phone. "Your old Lin is really a good person. How are you guys doing now?" Yi Siki heard Lin Shihao close the door. She smiled and said, "Didn't I move out of my house? In the end, he also moved to the apartment above my apartment. Now he's freeloading at my house every day. He's just like a child. He won't leave. Tell me, why didn't I realize that he was such a rascal before?" Welfare, Hongcha 866, that you're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.